Chapter 10:16. However, the headless snow monsters were still running, and some even trampled on the heads that had just fallen off. At the same time, as they ran, the snow on the ground quickly spread from their feet to their necks and reformed into new heads that kept roaring. A group of snow monsters trampled on the ground and rushed over quickly. Although there were only a few dozen of them, they ran with the momentum of tens of thousands of galloping horses. They couldn't be killed. They were stunned at the same time. Yu Qianqiu suddenly called out to Jiu Yu, who was behind him. A group of beasts made of ice and snow. It's no big deal. Let Executive Tsang Yun and Elder Ding deal with them. Let's go to the side so that we won't affect the two experts. Jiu Yu saw him flash to the other side of the Netherworld River and immediately followed without hesitation. Tsang Yun Axian looked back with contempt. Ding Xiang also wanted to retreat to the other side of the Netherworld River, but he let Yu Qianqiu take the initiative. If he continued to do this, Tsang Yun Axian would be the only one left here. He was afraid that he would make Tsang Yun Axian unhappy, so he could only shut up and accompany him. It should be known that Tsang Yun Axian had received the Immortal Palace's decree to protect Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu could be unscrupulous, but Ding Xiang did not dare to act recklessly. If Tsang Yun Axian killed him, it would be no different from dying in vain. If he died here, Tsang Yun Axian would have 10,000 reasons to shirk responsibility, so it was better to be honest. Jiu Yu stealthily glanced at Yu Qianqiu. Now, anyone could tell that the young girl was most likely not ordinary. He did not know why she had called him over. She wanted to help him get out of trouble and not help the other two who were also from the immortal realm. If she said that she had feelings for him, that was simply nonsense. Could it be that he had discovered his secret? The netherworld is indeed the netherworld. It's very different from the immortal world. Yu Qianqiu sighed as he looked at the other side of the Netherworld River. Then, he tilted his head to look at Jiu Yu, who was avoiding his gaze, and his lips curled into a smile. The reason why she protected him was not only because he had lived for a long time, but also because she felt that this wandering aquatic creature was hiding some secret, and it was a big secret that was waiting for her to unravel. The snow monsters charged forward, causing the ground to tremble. The surrounding snowy peaks finally began to crack, and in the blink of an eye, they began to collapse, creating avalanches. The snowy peaks that had shed their outer shell of snow immediately became much thinner, turning into icebergs wearing ice armor. Under the ice armor were dark peaks. It was unknown how many years these ice armors had been wrapped around these mountains. In the face of the incoming snow monsters, Tsurigun Axian looked straight ahead at the rumbling snow and stood there calmly. Ding Xiang, on the other hand, was a little impatient. He did not have Tsurigun Axian's ability to rely on, especially since these snow monsters were strange. They were definitely not that simple. The fact that they could not be killed was a very good proof. Ding Xiang did not dare to let these snow monsters get too close. He activated his sword art, and the flying sword turned into a long rainbow that rushed into the galloping snow monsters. After a round of killing, the snow fog in front of them was instantly filled with killing, and it did slightly slow down the speed of the snow monsters. However, it only slowed down the speed of the snow monsters slightly. The snow monsters that had been defeated rolled and crawled on the ground. They quickly merged with the snow and returned to their original form. They rushed out of the snow. No matter how powerful the flying sword was, even if it killed this group of snow monsters into pieces, the snow monsters continued to rush out of the thick snow. Ding Xiang immediately looked at Tsurigun Axian helplessly. Humph. Tsurigun Axian coldly snorted and flipped his sleeves to reveal two palms. His palms raised a thick astral energy and suddenly pushed at the incoming snow monsters. Boom! The surging astral winds howled out violently, and the snow monsters that were dozens of meters away from them were immediately blown away by the strong astral winds and struggled to move forward. In the blink of an eye, the snow monsters were blown away by the strong astral winds, and the layers of snow were peeled away. The charging head gradually shrank, followed by the four legs and the running body. In the blink of an eye, the strong astral wind blew away the snow monsters, and they disappeared without a trace. Filled with confidence, Grey Cloud Xayan snorted coldly and withdrew his palms. Ding Xiang was just about to clap his hands and flatter him when he saw dozens of blue ice crystals flashing in the wind and snow. They shone with a magnificent blue light and quickly drilled into the thick snow under the ground. Crack, crack. The snow in front of them cracked open, and the snow monsters once again burrowed out of the ground. They were now only a few dozen meters away, and the dozens of snow monsters leaped over, arriving in the blink of an eye. Tsurugun Xayan and Ding Xiang's expressions changed at the same time. Tsurugun Xayan immediately raised his palms without hesitation and pushed out an even more violent astral wind. He sternly shouted, "Ding Xiang, those blue ice souls are the gate of life. Don't make pointless attacks. Wait for me to destroy this group of monsters, then use your flying sword to kill those ice souls." Okay. As the violent astral wind blew, Ding Xiang's flying sword was already dancing in the sky, waiting for an opportunity to strike. However, what caused the two's expressions to change was that this time, the snow monsters actually became smarter. Their bodies flashed with a blue light, and their bodies were covered in a layer of blue ice armor. They rushed toward the violent astral wind, and Tsurugun Xayan's astral wind could no longer harm them in the slightest. The snow monsters instantly pounced at the two. Tsurugun Xayan withdrew his palms and no longer made that pointless move. It was obvious that the astral wind had no effect on these snow monsters. His figure flashed, and he took the initiative to rush into the group of snow monsters that were charging at him. He used the most primitive method of fighting, and waved his palm at a snow monster that was charging at him. His cultivation was not child's play, and his speed was far faster than these snow monsters. With a palm strike, he could easily flatten a mountain to the ground. With a bang, a snow monster was blown to smithereens and sent flying. An azure ice soul immediately appeared, but it was immediately grabbed by Tsurugun Xayan's claws. He directly pinched it between his 3 fingers, and it exploded into blue ice powder with a bang. On the other side, after Ding Xiang used his flying sword to kill a snow monster, he discovered that the snow monster had recovered. He immediately understood that although the flying sword was powerful, it was not effective against these snow monsters. Instead, Tsurugun Xayan was more experienced. Thus, he followed suit, and the flying sword flashed into the storage bracelet on his wrist. His body flipped, and his palms were like shadows. The dozens of snow monsters were smashed into powder one by one, and the ice souls hidden in their bodies had nowhere to hide. They were crushed into blue ice powder by the two of them. In the blink of an eye, the dozens of snow monsters were completely wiped out. The two of them thought that it was over, but after the blue ice powder fluttered in the air for a while, it quickly gathered together and became a dazzling azure ice soul again. The two of them were instantly speechless. Even Yu Qianqiu and Xin Yu, who were on the Netherworld River, were dumbfounded. They could not kill these things no matter what, so what was the point of continuing to fight? Yu Qianqiu was about to tell the two of them to leave, but he saw the girl standing on the ice peak wave her palms continuously, and countless azure ice souls shot into the snow at the foot of the ice mountain. In the blink of an eye, the snow arched and cracked everywhere, and hundreds and thousands of snow monsters crawled out of the ground. That was not the end. The girl then scattered several red ice souls to the foot of the mountain, and even more ferocious snow monsters crawled out of the snow. Each of their eyes emitted a terrifying red light. Finally, the girl scattered a handful of black ice souls to the foot of the mountain, but the black ice souls did not react for a long time after they were planted in the snow. However, the hundreds and thousands of snow monsters that had crawled out of the mountain were enough to make one's scalp numb. Moreover, these were some guys that could not be killed no matter what. A group of snow monsters began to rush over, and the ground shook violently. The few of them felt that they had provoked a hornet's nest. Old song, capture the leader first. Yu Qianqiu suddenly shouted while staring at the girl. Immediately, Zhangyan Xian understood what he meant. He flashed into the air and directly shot toward the girl on the ice peak. Unexpectedly, there were 10 consecutive explosions in the snow at the foot of the ice peak. 10 black ice-armored warriors crawled out of the ground, and 5 of them intercepted Zhangyan Xian in the air. In an instant, they began to fight in the air, and they did not seem to be at a disadvantage at all. The other 5 black ice-armored warriors formed a pentagonal formation and spread out around the girl in the air. It was obvious that they were protecting her. In the beginning, Zhangyan Xian did not take these black ice-armored warriors seriously. However, after fighting with them in the air, he was immediately shocked. He realized that the cultivation of these ice-armored warriors was actually not weaker than the early-stage Netherworld Emperor. In other words, there were 5 early-stage Netherworld Emperor experts surrounding him, a mid-stage Immortal Emperor expert. Due to a moment of carelessness, he was caught off guard and surrounded by these ice-armored warriors. He did not even have the chance to draw his sword, and was at a loss for words. He never dreamed that a girl who seemed to be an early-stage Netherworld Venerable would actually have so many early-stage Netherworld Emperor experts protecting her. It was a little shocking. He could not help but suspect this girl's identity, and he did not know who she was. The battle in the air was very lively. The 5 black shadows that surrounded Zhangyan Xian were as fast as phantoms, and did not give Zhangyan Xian any chance to escape. Zhangyan Xian was furious. He was tired of dealing with them, but he had to be patient and carefully protect himself, waiting for an opportunity to draw his sword and use a fatal killing move. On the other side of the Netherworld River, Yu Qianqiu and Shen Yu turned pale with fright. They didn't expect that with Grey Cloud Xian's cultivation, he would be beaten by a few icemen to the point where he could only defend himself. Moreover, there were still 5 icemen eyeing him covetously from the side. They hadn't even joined in the attack on Grey Cloud Xian. The most frightening thing was that these snow monsters could not be killed at all. What the hell? Who was this woman? Could she be the Snow Empress of the Netherworld realm in this million-mile snowy mountain? But she did not look like it. Yu Qianqiu's eyes flickered incessantly. Now he vaguely understood why the people from the immortal dimension were unable to leave this place alive. Just think about it, any random person that came out was able to bring along so many experts. How could ordinary experts from the immortal dimension resist them? Chapter 10:17. On the other side of the Netherworld River, Ding Xiang, who was dealing with hundreds and thousands of snow monsters by himself, was in even more pain. The snow monsters formed by the azure ice spirits swarmed over, and some leaped down from above, wrapping him up into a ball. However, this was nothing. His body was very fast, and his palms were like shadows. He could shatter one with each palm. Although he didn't have time to shatter their ice spirits, with his late-stage great immortal cultivation, he could barely deal with them. However, ever since the 100 snow monsters with glowing red eyes joined the attack, he almost burst into tears. These snow monsters with red eyes weren't something he could shatter with a single palm strike. As soon as he clashed with them, he realized that the snow monsters with blue ice souls were only at the level of underworld sages, but the ones with red eyes were at the level of underworld venerables. They weren't too far off from his level of cultivation. At most, he could push them back with one palm. If he used more force, he could crack them. However, when they rolled on the ground, they would immediately recover. He couldn't hurt them, couldn't kill them, and there were so many of them. Imagine, if nearly 100 of these snow monsters surrounded Ding Xiang, and nearly 1,000 snow monsters with azure ice spirits swarmed him, what would happen to him? Amidst the deafening roars, Ding Xiang's clothes were in tatters, and his body was full of injuries. He was on the brink of death. He was filled with regret now. What was she doing here with these 2 fellows in a trance? In such a crazy group fight, Ding Xiang's figure could no longer be seen from the outside. They could only guess that Ding Xiang was still alive and not dead from the snow monster's movements, the sounds of fighting, and Ding Xiang's angry roars. On the other side of the Netherworld River, Yu Qianqiu and Shen Yu's scalps were numb. One really couldn't judge a book by its cover. The few men thought that the young lady was easy to bully, but when she showed her power, the few men together were not enough to fight her. The young lady just stood there like she was watching a show. We. Shen Yu muttered a few times. He looked at the Netherworld River in front of him and was implicitly reminding Yu Qianqiu if they should escape first. His cultivation wasn't considered high among the Styx's water tribe, but it wasn't by luck that he had lived for so long. Most importantly, if you can't win, don't force yourself. If you need to compromise, do so. If you need to escape, do so. Face is worthless. Never try to be a hero. This was his secret trick. However, this time, he couldn't run away even if he wanted to. His body was sealed by Yu Qianqiu. Without Yu Qianqiu's permission, running away would be a dead end. Therefore, he wanted to kindly remind Yu Qianqiu that it was time for them to run. He felt that Yu Qianqiu was not a person with a strong backbone. He could tell that Yu Qianqiu was not an ordinary person just by watching the fire from the other side. How can you abandon your friends when they are in danger? Yu Qianqiu glanced at him and warned. He turned around and did not say anything else. His reasoning was good, but he didn't see him helping his friends when they were in danger. In fact, he wanted to run when he saw this scene. However, if he wanted to run, it would be a matter of seconds. There was no hurry. Even if he wanted to run, he had to wait until Tsangyan Axayan was dead. This was because Tsangyan Axayan was trapped now. He hadn't used his true trump card. He had seen Tsangyan Axayan's 3-in-1 sword-drawing technique with his own eyes. Its power was like the explosion of a nuclear weapon. Once Tsangyan Axayan pulled out the last sword, these snow monsters would be like clay chickens and pottery dogs. They would not be able to withstand a single blow. Therefore, it wasn't time to run yet. At this moment, Ding Xiang, who was surrounded by a group of snow monsters and wrapped into a big bun, suddenly shouted, "Soaring dragon!" Suddenly, a hoarse roar came from the stuffed bun. It was obvious that it couldn't hold on any longer and wanted to fight for its life. In the middle of the big bun that was made of snow monsters, a white pillar of light suddenly erupted into the sky. With a bang, all the snow monsters that were pouncing toward the center were sent flying. The power was really shocking. The shockwave even forced the two people on the other side of the Styx to take a few steps back. Ding Xiang, who was almost completely naked, rushed into the sky. He didn't care about anything else. He broke out of the encirclement and immediately fled into the distance. However, what he didn't expect was yet to come. The hundreds of red-eyed snow monsters that were sent flying rolled on the ground and immediately turned into huge snow eagles. They flapped their wings and turned into white shadows that quickly chased after Ding Xiang. The other thousands of azure icy soul snow monsters followed suit and rolled on the ground. In an instant, an overwhelming number of snow eagles rose into the sky and chased after Ding Xiang. TSK. Oh no! Old Ding probably wouldn't be able to escape this time. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed. He and Shen Yu looked at each other and saw the same worry in each other's eyes. Shen Yu was depressed. You're not helping them and you're not running away. Are you waiting for them to kill those two fellows and then free up their hands to deal with us? He pouted at the flowing sticks in front of him. His meaning was to remind him that they really should go. If they waited any longer, it would be troublesome. Yu Qianqiu put his hands behind his back and snorted coldly. He stood straight and motionless, showing his attitude. Shen Yu looked at him, and his expression kept twitching. If it wasn't for the restriction, he really wanted to go over and kick him a few times before running away. However, Yu Qianqiu's unyielding and arrogant look inadvertently fell into the eyes of Grey Cloud Axayan, who was tired of dealing with them. He suddenly looked like an idler who was watching the fire from the other side of the river. He immediately roared, "You Qianqiu, what are you watching? If I die, you won't live either. Come and help me so that I can free up my hands to deal with them." Yu Qianqiu was stunned when he heard that. He secretly sneered and thought disdainfully, "Even if you die 10,000 times, I'll still run away and live well." He looked up at the 5 black-armored warriors beside the girl and shrugged helplessly. He shouted loudly, "Old Sung, it's not that I don't want to help you. If I help you, it'll be the same as harming you. My small body can't handle the other 5. If something happens to me, then even if you can pass this trial, you won't be able to pass the immortal emperor's trial. Death is still the only path for you. You'd better fight calmly and slowly look for a favorable opportunity. You also saw that in such a critical situation, I, Yu Qianqiu, am standing here with an indomitable spirit. Have I ever tried to escape alone? Look at that Ding Xiang, he only cares about running for his life. This kind of person will sooner or later suffer retribution. *T. Tsungyan Aksayan, who was trapped and struggling to deal with the other 5 black-armored warriors, understood that what Yu Qianqiu said was reasonable. Once Yu Qianqiu came to help, the 5 black-armored warriors would definitely attack Yu Qianqiu. With Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, he would be killed in a few moves, and Tsungyan Aksayan would not be able to save him at the moment. However, he really couldn't stand Yu Qianqiu's leisurely look. He couldn't help but shout angrily, "Do you think I'm blind? If Ding Xiang doesn't run away, he'll die here." Bang! Ah! A loud sound was heard, followed by a muffled groan from Grey Cloud Aksayan. He had been distracted by Yu Qianqiu's words, and had been kicked in the shoulder by a black-armored warrior. He had almost been kicked in the head. He immediately shut his mouth and focused on fighting the enemy. "Ah! Old Sung, are you okay?" Yu Qianqiu asked with concern, gritting his teeth as if the kick had landed on his body. "Shut up!" Tsungyan Aksayan shouted again. He had really made up his mind not to speak anymore. If he continued to speak, even if he didn't get beaten to death, he would die from anger. Yu Qianqiu just tilted his chin at Jiu Yu helplessly, as if saying that his good intentions were not reciprocated. Suddenly, he heard a shrill cry for help from the distant sky, "Yu Qianqiu, come and save me." Ah! It was Ding Xiang's voice. Was he still alive? Yu Qianqiu looked up in surprise and saw a group of white shadows chasing after Ding Xiang, who was running naked in the sky. Yu Qianqiu's expression instantly changed. It was true that this guy came to ask for help, but wasn't he just looking for trouble? A panicked look flashed across Jiu Yu's face. He pulled on Yu Qianqiu's sleeve, as if saying, "I know you're not a gentleman, so stop pretending and let's escape." The two of them didn't know that Ding Xiang was really at his wit's end. Because he had used up too much of his cultivation, his speed in the sky was not enough to escape from the group of red-eyed snow eagles and escape from this vast snowy region. Moreover, because he had to take care of more positions in the sky, he had almost forced himself into a dead end. In desperation, he remembered that there was still Yu Qianqiu and Shen Yu who were free. Although he knew that their cultivations were not that great and the chances of them saving him were very small, they were more or less his last straw of hope, right? There was no reason not to come. Seeing the overwhelming number of snow eagles chasing after Ding Xiang, Yu Qianqiu immediately pointed in the direction of Grey Cloud Aksayan and shouted to Ding Xiang, "Ding Xiang, hurry up and go to Grey Cloud Aksayan. He can't escape now. If you help him create a chance, he will be able to escape and use the Heartless Palace's 3 swords in 1 sword drawing technique. My cultivation can't save you, only Grey Cloud Aksayan can." He was almost screaming at the top of his lungs. He was worried that Ding Xiang would attract the overwhelming disaster over. Ding Xiang, who was running away in a panic, looked at Yu Qianqiu, who was desperately waving at him to go away. He was really close to tears. I'm already here. However, he knew that what Yu Qianqiu said made sense. He couldn't save him, only Grey Cloud Xian could save him. For his life. Ding Xiang glanced at the large group of snow eagles that had already caught up to him. Without hesitation, he dashed in the direction of Grey Cloud Xian. Hi! He forced himself to shout. He was prepared to do his best to create a chance for Grey Cloud Xian to escape. Then, he would enjoy Grey Cloud Xian's protection. Grey Cloud Xian's spirit was lifted when he heard this. It was great that Ding Xiang could come and help him. However, although their thoughts were good, the reality was cruel. 2 of the 5 ice-armored warriors beside the young girl immediately dashed out and stood in front of Ding Xiang. Their dark, icy eyes stared at Ding Xiang. Ding Xiang was dumbfounded. This black ice-armored warrior was able to force Zhang Yun Xian to such a state. Needless to say, he would not be able to deal with any one of them, let alone 2 of them. Chapter 10:18. What should I do? I can't go to Ash Grey Cloud Xian anymore, or I'll die even faster. Ding Xiang decided to look for Yu Qianqiu, his only life-saving straw. In a panic, he rushed into the sky, trying to avoid the snow eagles that had already caught up to him. The 2 ice-armored warriors seemed to have no intention of taking his life. They let him escape and flashed back to the girl's side to protect her. However, this time, Ding Xiang had nowhere to run. It was extremely difficult to rush to Yu Qianqiu's side. Thousands of snow eagles had already spread out a net and were ready to pounce. In an instant, they swarmed over. Ah! Yu Qianqiu, save me! Ding Xiang screamed in pain as he was directly beaten to the ground by the group of snow eagles. He was not far from where he was initially surrounded. At this time, Ding Xiang's cultivation was almost exhausted, and he could no longer fight back like before. He really could not hold on any longer, and he did not have the energy to resist anymore. Therefore, he simply accepted his fate, closed his eyes, and stood there, waiting for his fate. However, the strange thing was that once he stopped resisting, the group of snow eagles actually stopped attacking as well. Dozens of them spread their wings and hugged him tightly. The other snow eagles opened their mouths at Ding Xiang, who was hugged into a ball, and spat out thick, cold white fog. In an instant, the cold white fog spread everywhere, and within it, there were snow eagles constantly flying up and down. When the group of snow eagles stopped flapping their wings in the air, the white fog that filled the air gradually dissipated, and a huge crystal-clear ice block appeared in its place. Ding Xiang, who was almost naked, was frozen inside, motionless. His twisted expression was clearly visible, and there were dozens of blue ice souls surrounding him, dyeing his skin slightly blue. This scene stunned Yu Qianqiu and Shen Yu, who were on the other side of the river Styx, and they could not help but look at the girl standing on the ice peak. Coincidentally, the girl also looked over. Her mouth opened and closed slightly. Her voice was too soft to hear what she said, but Yu Qianqiu could tell from the familiar shape of her mouth that she said the word, big liar. Asterisk whoosh, asterisk at this moment, the snow eagles that were hovering in the air on the other side of the river Styx seemed to have received some sort of instruction, and all of them charged towards Yu Qianqiu and Yu Qianqiu. Shen Yu panicked. As expected, he was going to deal with the 2 of them as soon as he could. He grabbed Yu Qianqiu and said, "Let's go. Go hide in the river Styx for now. I'll deal with them." Yu Qianqiu shrugged him off. Hearing this, Shen Yu did not hesitate anymore. He dashed into the river Styx in a flash, and disappeared without even looking back. He ran far away in an instant, and stuck his head out of the river Styx to watch from afar. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes as he stared at the group of snow eagles that were charging towards him. The corner of his mouth curled into a cold smile. Thousands of purple flame high-energy blades had already silently formed around his body, and they quickly densely covered the sky above the river Styx. When the group of snow eagles neared the river Styx, he suddenly stretched out his hand and opened his claws. The invisible purple flame high-energy blades suddenly attacked. In an instant, the snow eagles above the river Styx screeched. The snow eagles that were charging towards him were in a mess in the air, but they could not resist the purple flame high-energy blades. In an instant, chunks of snow fell into the river Styx. The snow eagles that were missing wings, legs, or heads in the air wanted to flash back to the snow on the other side of the river Styx to rearm themselves. However, Yu Qianqiu was only using them to test the group attack power of the purple fire high-energy blade. The reason he was able to stand there so calmly without running away was because he naturally had a killing move to deal with these snow monsters. Otherwise, it would be strange if he didn't panic. He spread his fingers in the air, and thousands of purple flame high-energy blades instantly melted into intense purple flames. They were still invisible, and they immediately wrapped around the snow monsters that were trying to escape. Instantly vaporized. A vast white mist suddenly appeared above the Netherworld River and rose. Close to 1,000 snow monsters that were killed by the purple flame high-energy sword were instantly vaporized by the high temperature. Close to 1,000 blue or red ice souls immediately appeared above the Netherworld River. Yu Qianqiu looked strangely at the stunned girl on the ice peak and smiled. He moved his fingers slightly, and the high temperature immediately wrapped around thousands of ice spirits. Immediately, the red and blue ice spirits above the river Styx trembled. They wanted to get rid of the terrifying high temperature that wrapped around them and restrained them. However, they did not have the strength to do so. They had encountered something that was their natural nemesis. The bright red and blue colors of the ice soul gradually faded, and its body gradually shrunk into mist. A painful moan that sounded like a soul being tortured rang out in the sky above the Styx. The sound was so repetitive that it made people panic. It was as if the entire night sky was echoing with this terrifying sound. Yu Qianqiu looked up at the sky in surprise. He felt that every ice spirit seemed to have a person's soul in it. It was very strange. Seeing that all the ice souls had turned into mist and disappeared, the silent, agonizing sounds of struggling slowly disappeared. The girl on the ice peak opened her mouth slightly and looked at Yu Qianqiu in disbelief. So this cowardly guy hiding at the side was the real expert among these people. Shen Yu, who was far away on the surface of the river Styx, was also dumbfounded. Grey Cloud Axayan, who had taken the time to pay attention to this side, was instantly energized. He said, Yu Qianqiu, if you have the ability, don't hide it anymore. Come and help me. Yu Qianqiu ignored him for the time being. The intense high temperature condensed into purple flame high-energy blades again and distributed them around his body as a guard. He quickly looked around. He was worried that these ice spirits would revive again. After waiting for a while, he heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that there was no reaction. He thought to himself that the high temperature was indeed the nemesis of these snow monsters. Then, he flashed to the other side of the river. Looking at Ding Xiang, who was frozen in the huge ice block, Yu Qianqiu's brows twitched slightly. The purple flame high-energy blades beside him immediately broke down into several pieces and enveloped the huge ice block with high temperature. Immediately, the huge ice block vaporized and shrunk. However, before the huge ice block completely melted, the remaining ice blocks immediately exploded. Dozens of blue ice spirits quickly flew away as if they had seen a ghost. Yu Qianqiu did not make things difficult for them. The main reason was that he did not want to hear that damned sound again. He put away the purple flame high-energy blades and looked at Ding Xiang, who was standing there stiffly. He released his divine sense to check on him and found that his heart was beating weakly. With his cultivation, he should not die. After all, the physical body of an immortal was different from that of a mortal. It would not be so easy for him to die. You are from the celestial world's heartless palace. A terrifying cold snort suddenly echoed in the surroundings. It was a stranger's voice. Yu Qianqiu suddenly raised his head, the 5 black-armored warriors that were fighting fiercely with Tsangyin Xayan suddenly retreated and returned to the top of the ice mountain. They saw that the 10 black-armored warriors were surrounding the young girl, and there was a man and a woman standing on each side. The man was tall and had a sharp face. He had an extraordinary aura. The woman was elegant and dazzling. Both of them were dressed in white. The 3 of them stood together. Especially the way the young girl looked at them, it was obvious that they were a family of 3. A family of 3 suddenly appeared in this godforsaken place. Coupled with the fact that the young girl could summon so many snow monsters to protect her, Yu Qianqiu and Tsangyin Xayan immediately thought of the legendary Snow Emperor and Snow Queen. The young girl was naturally the daughter that had been injured by someone from the celestial world. Facing a great enemy, Tsangyin Xayan, who had his hands free, was shocked. His right hand had already reached for the storage bracelet on his left wrist. The man standing on the ice mountain stared sharply at Tsangyin Xayan's hand movements. He said slowly, "Looks like Wang Qing didn't send you to find me." Hearing this, Tsangyin Xayan was slightly startled. He didn't want to act rashly. He slowly let go of the storage bracelet and said in shock, "You know our sect leader. Just an old friend from many years ago." The white-robed man's tone gradually turned cold. "I didn't think that the Heartless Palace would have another mid-stage immortal emperor expert. Since Wang Qing didn't send you, why did you trespass into my Great Snow Mountain?" His words clearly showed that he was the master of Great Snow Mountain. Tsangyin Xayan looked at the couple's cultivation. They were indeed mid-stage underworld emperor. He cupped his hands and said, "I am Heartless Palace's consecrator, Tsangyin Xayan. You must be Snow Emperor and Snow Queen. Sorry for being impolite. Since you already know, don't be so long-winded." Snow Emperor's eyes were sharp. "Let me ask you, why did you trespass into my Great Snow Mountain and attack my daughter?" "Father." The young girl pointed at Yu Qianqiu and said indignantly, "This big liar killed close to 1,000 of my ice soul warriors. He even lied to me that." She revealed everything that Yu Qianqiu had lied to her in one breath. On the other side, Yu Qianqiu was instantly speechless. He didn't think that he would be so unlucky to offend the daughter of Snow Emperor and Snow Queen. On the other side, Snow Queen's eyes were already filled with killing intent. She stared at Yu Qianqiu with a majestic aura and shouted, "How dare you!" Luckily, Tsangyin Xayan still wanted to protect Yu Qianqiu. He hurriedly continued, "I didn't mean to offend your daughter. I was really framed by Li Palace's Aqua Race's crown prince, Li Zhong." He immediately recounted what happened at the Dragon Transformation Gate and how he was forced out of the river Styx by Li Zhong. It wasn't that Tsangyin Xayan was really afraid of them, but that they were old friends with sect master Wang Qing. The family of 3 looked at Yu Qianqiu in surprise. The killing intent on Snow Queen's face instantly disappeared. She said in surprise, "You helped the 4th Crown Prince of Li Palace make the Great Leap?" After seriously sizing him up, the husband and wife immediately realized that they couldn't see through Yu Qianqiu's cultivation. They looked at each other in bewilderment. It was just a coincidence." Yu Qianqiu smiled modestly. Tsangyin Xayan cupped his hands in a timely manner and said, "I hope that Snow Emperor and Snow Empress can be magnanimous and let us go on account that we didn't mean to offend you. We will leave this place immediately and not disturb you again." "Humph. On account of Wang Qing, I can let you go. But he..." Snow Empress suddenly stared at Yu Qianqiu and said, "No matter how high your cultivation is, since you dared to bully my daughter, even if we die, we will fight you and seek justice." What she meant was that she thought that Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was too high, and the husband and wife were prepared to join forces to seek justice from Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu was depressed. Why would there be a need for the 2 of you to join forces? One of you is enough to deal with me. Chapter 10:19. The young girl immediately became nervous when she heard this. She didn't expect to hear the words "even if one of us dies" from her father's mouth. Thinking back to how Yu Qianqiu had killed over 1,000 of her ice soul warriors with a wave of his hand, she immediately regarded Yu Qianqiu as an expert among experts, and began to worry about her parents' safety. Sungyin Axayan was a little puzzled. Even the Li Palace's sea tribe knew about this, but this Snow Empress of the Netherworld actually knew nothing about it. Her information source was really blocked. Yu Qianqiu also had the same doubts. Sungyin Axayan cupped his hands and said, "Snow Empress is too serious. Yu Qianqiu is only at the early stage of small immortal. He only used a few concealment techniques to prevent others from seeing through his cultivation. Many people in the Netherworld know about this, so Snow Empress will know once she asks around." The husband and wife were stunned when they heard this, and began to re-evaluate Yu Qianqiu. Being looked at like this made Yu Qianqiu feel very awkward. It doesn't matter if it's real or fake. Snow Empress pointed at Yu Qianqiu and snorted coldly. "You dare to bully my daughter, then leave your life behind. Sungyin Axayan, on account of Wang Qing, and on account that nothing has happened to my daughter, you can leave. If he stays, there's still him." She pointed at Ding Xiang, who had just recovered. Ding Xiang, who was almost running naked, had actually heard everything. He was happy that he wasn't mentioned, but when he turned around and saw the appearance of Snow Empress and Snow Empress, he saw Snow Empress pointing at him. His expression immediately froze, and he nervously took out a set of clothes from his storage bangle to put them on. Yu Qianqiu, who wanted to say a few more words, realized that Snow Empress wouldn't make an exception, so he simply shut his mouth and didn't bother to say anything. In any case, Sungyin Axayan wouldn't let anything happen to him. Taking 10,000 steps back, he could escape at any time, so there was nothing to be afraid of. He calmed down, but Sungyin Axayan said with a dark expression, "It's not that I don't want to give the Snow Emperor face, but I received the decree of the sect leader to protect him. Actually, I don't want to protect him. He killed my grandson, so he is my enemy. I want to tear his tendons and skin his bones. However, if something happens to him, my heartless palace, including the sect leader, will face a disaster. I have no way out, so I have to protect him. Snow Empress, please give face to the sect leader of the Heartless Palace and be merciful." When he said that, both husband and wife were a little surprised. The Snow Emperor looked Yu Qianqiu up and down, and said in a low voice, "What you mean is that if something happens to him, even Wang Qing will be implicated? Could it be that he has some sort of background? Could he be someone from the immortal world's immortal palace? More or less?" Sungyin Axayan nodded. Although he didn't know what the relationship between the Snow Emperor and sect leader Wang Qing was, he heard that the Snow Emperor would kill anyone from the immortal world who trespassed into the Great Snow Mountain, but he was lenient to the people of the Heartless Palace. It was obvious that his relationship with sect leader Wang Qing was not ordinary. Therefore, Sungyin Axayan briefly recounted how Yu Qianqiu received the decree of the immortal emperor, and how the Heartless Palace received the decree of the Immortal Palace to protect Yu Qianqiu, composed for Jin Tai's wedding. The Snow Empress lost her voice in surprise. Even the young girl and the mother and daughter looked at Yu Qianqiu in disbelief. The mother and daughter naturally knew what kind of person the immortal Emperor Jin Tai was. He was a supreme being in the immortal world that was equivalent to the underworld emperor of the underworld. For someone like Jin Tai to personally mention him and send an expert to protect him, one could imagine how talented he was. The mother and daughter's eyes couldn't help but shine. Women naturally yearned for such beautiful things, so they had low immunity to such things. It was just that the two of them didn't dare to believe that this ordinary-looking guy was really so talented. Compose? The Snow Empress frowned and was a little confused. Since Jin Tai asked you to protect him, why did the two of you come to the underworld? What does this have to do with composing? Sungyin Axayan looked at Yu Qianqiu and sneered. This guy is very original. He said that in order to compose a song that will satisfy the immortal emperor, he wants to travel the world to increase his experience. He called it gathering some local customs. Who knows what he's trying to do? Gathering local customs. The Snow Empress paused for a moment. Then, she roughly understood the meaning of this phrase, but she was more hesitant. Her family owed Wang Qing a big favor. If this matter really involved Wang Qing's safety, she really couldn't do anything to Yu Qianqiu. Just as she was frowning and hesitating, she suddenly heard the faint excited voice of her wife. After hearing what she said, she couldn't help but roll her eyes. She slightly glanced at her daughter and found that there was indeed a trace of excitement hidden in her eyes. She seemed to want to say something but was hesitant. It was very rare. Then, she looked at her wife. She had the same behavior as her daughter, women. After being speechless for a while, the Snow Empress didn't know what to say. Finally, she coughed and said with a stern face, "For Wang Qing's sake, I cannot pursue this matter. But we only have one daughter. How can we let her suffer? If you can find a way to get my daughter's forgiveness, I can let bygones be bygones." He really couldn't say the real reason. Song Yun Xan was stunned. The Snow Empress had already made a concession, so he couldn't say anything else. He turned to look at Yu Qianqiu and transmitted his voice. "You killed so many of her ice soul warriors. If you want her to forgive you, I'm afraid it's useless. Anyway, you have a sharp tongue. You can coax her yourself." "That's true." Yu Qianqiu's eyes turned. Just as he was preparing to use his glib tongue to trick the lady, the Snow Empress smiled gently at the Snow Empress and said, "No matter what, we have some friendship with Wang Qing. Since he is Wang Qing's people, he can also be considered a guest. It's not good to let a guest stand in the wild. Why don't you invite the guest back to the Ice Palace? We can talk about it slowly." Once she said this, the Snow Empress immediately glared at her. Yu Qianqiu and Song Yun Xian became a little wary because of the sudden change in the other party's attitude. Women are the most vicious. They suspected that the other party had some tricks up her sleeves. Seeing that the Snow Empress didn't say anything, the Snow Empress took it that he agreed. She immediately smiled at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Don't doubt my intentions. I'll tell you the truth. Bringing you to the Ice Palace is indeed to put you under house arrest. But on account of Wang Qing, as long as you are obedient, I won't do anything to you. You can rest assured about this. Of course, if you can get my daughter to forgive you, then it's another matter. As long as my daughter nods, she will immediately let you go. If my daughter isn't willing to forgive you, then..." As she said this, she looked at Song Yun Xian and smiled coldly. "We have to give face to Wang Qing, but not everyone can trample on our dignity. When the time comes, I'll have to trouble Consecrator Tsang to return to the Celestial Realm's Heartless Palace and ask Wang Qing to personally come and take us away. My wife and I can also catch up with him. Consecrator Tsang, Yu Qianqiu, I'm not making things difficult for you, right?" This. Song Yun Xian muttered to himself. If it was to save trouble, he was still confident in his 3 swords as one sword drawing style. It wasn't that he didn't dare to fight with this couple. But since they had already mentioned that they were old friends with sect leader Wang Qing, he couldn't force them. Unable to make a decision, he couldn't help but ask Yu Qianqiu, "What do you think?" Sigh. "It's better to be kind if I can. Who asked the other party to be an expert? Do I still want to survive in the netherworld?" Yu Qianqiu chuckled and said, "You can make the decision. I have no objections." "Humph. Now it's up to me to make the decision." Song Yun Xian gritted his teeth and cupped his fists towards the family of 3. "Since Snow Empress has said so much, I'll naturally obey." Snow Empress smiled as she looked at her daughter, whose eyes were flickering. Suddenly, her expression turned cold as she looked towards the river of Netherworld. The one who is hiding in the river and eavesdropping on us. Since when did the river of Netherworld's water tribe like to do such sneaky things? Shin Yu, who was hiding on the shore of the river of Netherworld, had a change in expression. He hurriedly scuttled out of the river and obediently skimmed to Yu Qianzhou's side. Yu Qianzhou immediately cupped his fists and smiled apologetically at Snow Empress. He is with us. He has always been timid. Please forgive him, Snow Empress. Snow Empress raised her eyebrows on her fair and plump face. She clicked her tongue and said, "How did the river of Netherworld's water tribe mix with the people from the immortal world? Strange." She didn't intend to pursue the matter any further. She turned to Snow Empress, who had a long face, and said with a smile, "Husband, you don't have any objections if I handle it this way, right?" Snow Empress couldn't do anything to the mother and daughter. She turned into a beam of white light and flew away. Snow Empress chuckled and waved at the 10 black ice-armored warriors around her. The ice-armored warriors instantly turned from black to crystal clear. Black ice crystals were spat out and fell into her hands. Then, she pulled her daughter and chased after Snow Empress. Yu Qianzhou and the others stared at the lifeless ice-armored warriors for a while. They looked at each other and helplessly flew after them. On the vast snowfield, there were mountains rising and falling. The sky was black, and the ground was white. It was such a clear contrast between black and white. After spending half a day, Yu Qianzhou and the others landed on an ice cliff halfway up a majestic snowy mountain. The ice cliff was icy blue, and its surface area was at least 1,000 square meters. However, compared to the entire majestic snowy mountain, it was really too small. The heavy snow didn't stop. It was still falling, and the wind was blowing even more fiercely. There were crystal-clear pavilions on the ice cliff, as well as all kinds of strange flowers and plants carved out of ice. These ice sculptures contained ice crystals of various colors. There were probably more than 10,000 of them. They were frozen in the ice sculptures, making all the ice sculptures look like colorful ice lanterns. In this pitch-black underworld, they seemed to be unique. There was a cave residence on the mountain wall behind the ice cliff. The laughter of Snow Empress came from inside. "Those who come are guests. Everyone, come in." They couldn't help but take a few more glances at the ice sculptures outside. Because they casually glanced at them and found that there were at least dozens of the black ice crystals that they had seen before in the ice sculptures. Thinking of the power of those black ice-armored warriors, they were shocked. Especially Grey Cloud Exayan, who was secretly shocked. He didn't expect that there were so many early-stage Underworld Emperor experts under the Snow Empress. The few of them slowly walked into the cave with a belly full of questions. They were all wondering what kind of treasure this ice soul was refined from. It could actually condense into all kinds of animals to fight with humans. Moreover, it was divided into different levels of cultivation. How could those who had bitterly cultivated endure this? It was simply unimaginable. Seeing so many ice crystals, Yu Qianzhou suddenly felt a little itchy. Chapter 10:20. The Netherworld is a world of ice and snow. It's not as clear as the sun, moon, and stars of the immortal world. Although these ice caves are not as pleasing to the eye as the immortal world's sleeping quarters, they are all sculpted from 100-million-year-old ice. Cultivating here for a year is equivalent to cultivating in other places for 10 years. Not to mention the immortal world, even in the Netherworld, it's hard to find such a good place for cultivation. The Snow Empress led them around the ice palace and giggled as she pointed to a few rooms and introduced them. Finally, she smiled sweetly at them and said, "Don't worry and stay here. If you need anything, just come and find me. I won't keep you company." With that, she left with a bright smile on her face. "Stay here." Yu Qianzhou and the others were speechless as they watched her round and perky figure disappear at the end of the ice palace corridor. They weren't attracted by the Snow Empress's plump beauty, but they were confused and didn't know what this flirtatious woman was up to. The Netherworld Snow Empress actually acted like a brothel keeper and brought guests to look at the rooms. It was really out of their expectations. Was this woman scheming, or was she a fickle woman? They looked at each other. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and said, "Didn't you want me to get the princess's forgiveness? What do you mean by letting us stay here?" Ding Xiang's face was also filled with suspicion. That's strange. Even if they're here to receive guests, how come they don't see any subordinates in this huge ice palace? To actually trouble the Snow Empress to personally receive them, it really makes us feel fear and trepidation. His current impression of Yu Qianqiu could be said to be extremely good. Grey Cloud Axian snorted coldly and said, "She just wants peace and freedom. If she wants subordinates, there are many. Didn't you see her scattering beans to form soldiers?" When they recalled the scene of the ice souls turning into snow monsters, they all fell silent. Yu Qianqiu paused for a moment before turning around and walking into a room. The others curiously followed him in. There was no door to cover the room, only a winding entrance to prevent people from peeping into the room. There were no extra furnishings in the room, not even a table or chair. There was only a wide ice couch, which looked very monotonous. The inside was the same as the outside, ice blue and cool. In fact, the entire ice palace was directly dug out from a huge iceberg. No one knew how long this iceberg had existed. Perhaps, as Snow Empress said, it really had hundreds of millions of years of history. There was no need for lighting inside the ice palace. The ice layer emitted a faint sapphire blue light. The colors were magnificent and dreamlike. They looked at several rooms in a row. They were all of the same style, probably specially used to entertain guests. Therefore, there was nothing for everyone to choose. Each of them chose a room to stay temporarily. Only Jiu Yu did not choose and followed Yu Qianqiu. However, not long after, Grey Cloud Axian and Ding Xiang and Ding Ding barged into Yu Qianqiu's room. Yu Qianqiu was lying on the ice couch with his butt facing the outside, hugging his head and sleeping. Shen Yu was sitting cross-legged on the ground. After seeing the two come in, Jiu Yu stood up. Zhongyun Axian couldn't stand it anymore. He immediately kicked the ice couch and said angrily, "Look at you. Do you really want to stay here forever?" "I'm trying to figure out a way to leave this place," Yu Qianqiu said as he laid there motionlessly with his eyes closed. "Have you figured it out yet?" Zhongyun Axian said in a mocking tone. "What are you all thinking about?" The Snow Empress' laughter suddenly came from outside the door. Everyone turned around and saw the Snow Empress walking over with an ice tray. There were over 10 perfectly round white fruits the size of eggs on the ice tray. The Snow Empress stared blankly at Yu Qianqiu, who was lying on the ice couch with his head turned. She didn't expect him to still be in the mood to sleep. Yu Qianqiu immediately jumped up and chuckled, indicating that he didn't do it on purpose and was embarrassed. Zhongyun Axian looked at the things in the Snow Empress' hands and muttered, "Snow Empress, this is..." The Snow Empress chuckled and said, "There's nothing to entertain you in this world of ice and snow. This is the Great Snow Mountain specialty, the ice-snow underworld fruit. It's a good thing for netherworld cultivators to recover their lost cultivation. However, ordinary netherworld cultivators don't have the chance to taste it. At the same time, although it's good, it doesn't have much effect for you immortal world cultivators. However, the taste is passable, so I specially brought it for everyone to try." A plate of fruits was placed on the ice couch. The round and white fruits looked delightful, but no one dared to take them to try. Zhongyun Axian cupped his hands and said politely, "How dare we trouble the Snow Empress to do this?" The Snow Empress glanced at them and said with a smile, "Why? Are you worried that I'll poison you?" Her words hit everyone's concerns. Yu Qianqiu immediately smiled and tried to smooth things over. "Snow Empress, you're exaggerating. We offended the princess unintentionally and are feeling guilty. Even if the delicacy is in our mouths, it's like chewing wax. We really don't have the mood to eat. I wonder where the princess is. I'm in a hurry to apologize to the princess and hope to get her forgiveness. I hope the Snow Empress can help me. The Snow Empress replied with an "oh," and said with a smile, "I'm afraid you're in a hurry to leave this place." She pointed at the plate of fruits and said, "Eat this fruit first, then I'll bring you to see my daughter." The few of them stared at Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu was startled. Just as he was about to reach out to take it, Zhang Yinxian's voice sounded in his ears. "Be careful, it's a trap. Find a reason to refuse." Poison. What a joke, I'm not even afraid of the famous soul transformation smoke, why would I be afraid of this? Yu Qianqiu smiled and ignored Zhang Yinxian's voice to stop him again. He directly picked up a fruit the size of an egg and stuffed it into his mouth to chew. Once the skin of the fruit broke, the cold and sweet liquid flowed into his throat. There was no pit, and even the skin was swallowed into his stomach. The fragrance lingered in his mouth, and the aftertaste was endless. His eyes lit up and he praised, "It's really good stuff, the taste is not bad." Then he grabbed another one from the plate and stuffed it into his mouth. He nodded at the few of them, expressing that the taste was not bad. Zhang Yinxian's face darkened. If there was really poison, he would be implicated if something happened to Yu Qianqiu. The Snow Empress glanced at the few of them, and her gaze finally landed on Yu Qianqiu. Her eyes were full of praise, and she smiled sweetly without concealment. What a courageous man. No wonder you can gain Jintai's favor. I like it. Since you want to see my daughter, come with me. The unique charm of ice and snow that she exuded could not help but make the hearts of the men palpitate. The few of them were speechless as they watched Yu Qianqiu leave with the Snow Empress. Zhang Yinxian wanted to follow, but he was rejected by the Snow Empress. The plate of fruits on the ice couch was also taken away by the Snow Empress. She seemed to be angry at them for not knowing what was good for them. In the corridor of the ice palace, Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but stare at the voluptuous figure in front of him. Who knew that the Snow Empress seemed to have eyes on the back of her head? She giggled. Is it good looking? How is my figure compared to the women in the immortal world who enjoy the sunlight, rain, and morning mist? Ah. Yu Qianqiu's gaze quickly moved away from the voluptuous buttocks. He awkwardly sucked up to her. Of course the Snow Empress is better. Bootlicker. The Snow Empress kept cursing, but she still asked with great interest, that Ji Wu who is about to become the immortal empress of the immortal palace, since she can gain Jintai's favor, her looks must be extraordinary and rare. Compared to her, am I far from her? This was the mentality of a woman. She still had to ask questions after cursing. Yu Qianqiu had seen Ji Wu before, and she was indeed much prettier than the Snow Empress. However, how could Yu Qianqiu speak the truth? If he said that another woman was prettier than her in front of her, wouldn't that be asking for trouble? He immediately said solemnly, although she is beautiful, compared to the Snow Empress, she is still slightly inferior. Go away. The Snow Empress spat and scolded with a smile. Nonsense, bootlicker. Jintai's standards aren't so low. Although she scolded, the joy in her laughter wasn't concealed. It could be seen that she was a woman who dared to love and hate. In the end, the two of them kept on mocking each other and sucking up to each other until they reached the entrance of the ice palace. The wind and snow outside had already stopped. It was a pity that there wasn't any sunlight. Otherwise, it would be a rare snowy scene. Yu Qianqiu was wondering why she brought him out, but he saw the ice princess working on an ice flower amidst the rainbow formed by various ice spirits. The two of them walked behind the ice princess. The ice princess was so focused that she didn't even turn her head. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but stretch out his head to take a look. He wanted to see what kind of flower the other party was carving. In the end, it was a flower that looked a bit like a butterfly. He searched through his mind, and he even thought back to the patterns in the rare treasure's mirror, but he still couldn't see what kind of flower it looked like. He sighed endlessly in his heart. The netherworld really was vast and had all kinds of strange things. Linglong, what flower are you sculpting? The Snow Empress stood behind the Ice Princess and asked gently. It was a mother's love for her daughter. Shuel Linglong paused and thought for a while. She smiled and said, Rose. The Snow Empress' smile froze. Ah! Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but exclaim. He felt like he was struck by lightning. He looked at the flower that looked like a butterfly but not a butterfly. His eyes were filled with disbelief. This was actually a rose. Then, he looked at his two mothers who turned around to look at him and smiled apologetically. He giggled foolishly and said, I'm ignorant and ill-informed. So the rose of the underworld looks like this. I've learned a lot. There's no sunlight or rain in the netherworld, so roses can't grow. This is the celestial world's rose. Shuel Linglong muttered shyly. Ah! Yu Qianqiu was shocked again. He pointed at the ice flower and said in shock, You've never been to the celestial world. How can the celestial world's rose look like this? Paw! The Snow Empress moved as fast as lightning and slapped the back of his outstretched hand. She scolded, My daughter says roses are like this, so they are like this. Do I need you to talk so much? Chapter 10:21. Yu Qianqiu sucked in a breath of cold air and retracted his hand in pain. He didn't know what was wrong with this woman. Did she have to be like this with just one sentence? But seeing the anger on her face and Shuel Linglong's sobbing face, he vaguely guessed something. He swallowed back the vulgarities that were about to come out of his mouth. Then looking at the strangely shaped ice flowers around, his expression twitched. He thought they were some strange flowers from the netherworld. But now that he thought about it, it seemed like Shuel Linglong had created them out of thin air. Maybe that crab-like flower was the legendary peony flower. I can't see the sunlight, so I've never been to the celestial world. Shuel Linglong murmured, then looked up at Yu Qianqiu and asked, Can you tell me what a rose looks like? Snow Empress hugged her in her arms with heartache. She forced a smile and comforted, If there's a chance, your father and I will definitely take you to the celestial world to see. Yu Qianqiu looked at the two mothers and hesitated for a while. Finally, he couldn't help but ask, with Princess's cultivation, it shouldn't be a problem to go to the celestial world, right? Why can't you see the sunlight? It's all your celestial world people's doing. The Snow Empress turned her head and scolded. She couldn't hold back her tears anymore. The teardrops that rolled down her charming face were really pitiful and moving. Mother, I'm fine. I don't want to go to the celestial world. Shuel Linglong's tears also flowed down, but she hurriedly wiped her mother's tears. In the end, the two of them hugged each other and cried. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and looked at the entrance of the ice palace in a panic. He was really worried that Snow Empress would misunderstand after seeing this scene. If that happened, she wouldn't think that he bullied her wife and daughter. She would definitely fight him to the death. I heard that Princess was injured by someone in the celestial world and hasn't recovered yet. Princess can't go to the celestial world because of your injury. Yu Qianqiu asked the question in his heart. In order to stop the mother and daughter from crying any further, he tried to ask, Can you tell me what exactly is going on? However, at the mention of this, the Snow Empress seemed to recall some sad past events and cried until her shoulders trembled. Yu Qianqiu immediately panicked. If this continued, the Snow Empress would really misunderstand. He rolled his eyes, and no one knew what he was thinking. He stretched out his hand, and as if he was performing a magic trick, a beautiful red rose appeared in his hand. He handed it over to the mother and daughter pair, bringing a wisp of fragrance with it. This is. Shui Linglong's eyes lit up. She was attracted by the beautiful flowers. Snow Empress raised her head slightly and exclaimed, "Roses." Shui Linglong was pleasantly surprised. "This is a rose. So beautiful." Without waiting for Yu Qianqiu's consent, he grabbed it and placed it between his nose and mouth, smelling its fragrance with an intoxicated look on his face. Seeing that the mother and daughter finally stopped crying, Yu Qianqiu instantly chuckled proudly and said, "Coincidentally, I'm also a flower lover, so I brought some roses with me." He looked like a flower thief teasing the mother and daughter. His words sounded better than singing, but in reality, he had remembered that Utopia had planted all sorts of flowers, so he casually picked a rose. Speaking of which, he had to thank Guan Yu. Back then, when Yu Qianqiu first came to the 100 Flowers Valley with Guan Yu had bought many kinds of flower seeds from the 100 Flowers Valley and planted them in Utopia's flower fields. Now, he casually picked it to fool people. However, he only felt proud for a while before the smile on his face froze. The rose in Shui Linglong's hand was turning black at a visible speed, then slowly withering. In the end, it turned into ashes and disappeared with the wind. Shui Linglong held some ashes in her hands and shouted in panic, "Mother, mother, my rose." She was helpless and seemed to want to beg her mother to help her save the lost rose. However, Snow Empress was also helpless. Otherwise, her daughter would have seen a rose. Snow Empress's face was full of heartache. She grabbed her daughter's hands and didn't know what to say. Sigh. A sigh sounded behind Yu Qianqiu helplessly. Yu Qianqiu suddenly looked back and realized that it was none other than Snow Empress. He didn't know when she had come behind him, but she clearly knew what had happened. "Thank you for your kindness." Snow Empress patted Yu Qianqiu's shoulder and smiled bitterly. "The netherworld and the celestial world are different. The difference is between life and death. This distance is an insurmountable gap, an insurmountable law of heaven and earth. The netherworld is full of death. The flowers and plants in the celestial world can't survive here and will turn into ashes in the blink of an eye. But the celestial world is full of life. Most of the flowers and plants in the netherworld will have the same ending in the celestial world. Cultivation is something that goes against the natural law of heaven and earth. Unlike cultivators like me who go against the natural law, we can freely travel between the celestial world and the netherworld when we reach a certain realm. Do you understand what I mean?" Yu Qianqiu nodded thoughtfully. He recalled the scene when he had collected the resurrection grass in front of the gate to the netherworld. The resurrection grass had turned to dust the moment it came into contact with life. It was exactly as the Snow Empress had said. But it was also because he remembered the scene of collecting the resurrection grass that his eyes lit up. He clapped his hands and cheered, "I have a way to let the princess enjoy all kinds of beautiful flowers in the celestial world." The family of three perked up immediately. Snow Empress and Snow Emperor asked in surprise, "What way?" "Seal it with ice. We can use ice to seal the flowers in the celestial world and bring them to the netherworld. This way, as long as the ice does not melt, the death chi will not invade. The flowers will never wither, and Princess Linglong will be able to enjoy them forever," Yu Qianqiu said happily. This was because he had used the same method to collect the resurrection grass. Shui Linglong nodded excitedly, but Snow Empress and Snow Emperor's expressions were a little gloomy. Yu Qianqiu was stunned and said, "Won't this method work?" Snow Empress smiled bitterly and shook her head. "The frozen snow dance is a spell that my wife and I are proficient in. How could we not think of this method? If it's really useful, let alone a mere rose, even freezing thousands of miles in an instant wouldn't be a difficult task for me and my wife. But my wife and I are, after all, high-level cultivators of the netherworld. The death aura inside the ice we cast is even stronger than the death aura in the air of the netherworld. A mere rose will immediately turn into ashes as soon as it touches it. How can it be of any use? So that's how it is. Ah. That's not right. Yu Qianqiu scratched his face and said suspiciously, I once saw someone use ice to seal a resurrection grass and bring it back to the celestial world. According to Snow Empress, if the people in the celestial world use the frozen snow technique, the ice should contain life. Why didn't the resurrection grass turn into ashes? The resurrection grass is not an ordinary flower in the netherworld. It has an ancient name, yin-yang grass. Snow Empress explained, the most ancient saying is that there were originally only two realms, yin and yang. It refers to the human world and the netherworld. At that time, the human world was only called the yang realm. All living beings were equal, and there was no such name as the human world. Later, humans gradually stood out from all living beings and became the rulers of the yang realm. In order to show that humans were superior to other living beings, they called the yang realm the human world. The dead of the yang realm go to the netherworld, and those who transcend the netherworld go to the yang realm to be reincarnated as all kinds of living beings. The ancient method called it fate and reincarnation. It goes back and forth in an endless cycle. But later, as the living beings multiply, some of them comprehend to break the cycle of yin and yang, and transcend the divination of life and death. They pursue eternal life, and disdain to live together with ordinary living beings. Therefore, based on their comprehension, they opened up other spaces to reside in, which are the various spaces like the celestial world, and the demon world. And the resurrection grass cannot exist in other spaces. It only grows at the intersection of the yin and yang realms, which is also the intersection of the human world and the netherworld. Not only does it have magical effects, but more importantly, it shows the inalienable ancient status of the human world and the netherworld. Therefore, the resurrection grass has some characteristics that are different from other things. It does not grow in solitary yang, and does not grow in solitary yin. It is not something from the pure yin realm, nor is it something from the pure yang realm. It can bear the weight of yin and yang, which is really mysterious. And only it can be like what you said, sealed in ice and brought to the human world or the netherworld. But even so, it will not stay in the yin and yang realms for more than 7 days. Once it exceeds 7 days, it will immediately turn into ashes. At this point, the Snow Empress sighed and said, Now you should understand why even with the cultivation of us husband and wife, we are unable to bring flowers and plants from the outside world to the netherworld, right? It is not that we do not want to do it, but we cannot resist it. This is the eternal law of heaven and earth. Our cultivation is too insignificant in front of the law of heaven and earth. So that's how it is. Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly. He felt that this trip to the ice palace was not in vain. He had more or less gained some knowledge. Maybe it would be beneficial to his future cultivation. Then he looked at the desolate Shui Linglong and asked, Snow Empress, may I ask who in the celestial realm injured the princess? What kind of injury did she suffer? Why can't she recover after such a long time? Hearing this, the couple's faces were filled with anger. The Snow Empress gritted her teeth and said, This person was one of the 12 great celestial monarchs under Jin Tai. His name is Fire Virtue Celestial Monarch. Later, because his cultivation increased to the late stage of Celestial Emperor, Jin Tai was worried that he would threaten his ruling position in the celestial realm, so he suppressed him. He also fought back, but in the end, he was still no match for Celestial Emperor. However, he had already kept a trump card in the dark. Just when he was about to die in the hands of Kinta, he suddenly used the hidden Samadhi True Fire to block Kinta's pursuit and escape to the netherworld. Chapter 1022. True Samadhi Fire. Yu Qianqiu was startled. This name was too familiar. He immediately reacted and exclaimed, You mean True Samadhi Fire? Yes. It's the true samadhi fire that shook the three realms and was known to be invincible. Jin Tai didn't expect that old thief fire virtue had actually cultivated the true samadhi fire. He was almost severely injured by him, which was why he escaped to the netherworld, Snow Emperor said angrily. He had always heard of the power of true samadhi fire, but had never seen it for himself. Yu Qianqiu suppressed his excitement and asked, "What happened next? Where did that fire virtue immortal lord escape to?" He had been hot-headed and wanted to ask fire virtue immortal lord about the mysteries of true samadhi fire. Snow Empress squinted at him and said unhappily, "Dead." "Ah, dead? How could he be dead?" At this point, Yu Qianqiu immediately realized that there was something wrong with his words. He waved his hand awkwardly and explained, "Don't misunderstand, I just heard that true samadhi fire is very powerful. I'm afraid he was not so easy to kill. Fortunately, he had a good attitude before." The Snow Empress calmed her emotions, and slowly said in a deep voice, "After Huoda escaped into the netherworld, Jin Tai also chased after him. The two of them fought again in the netherworld, but Huoda relied on the power of the samadhi true fire, and Jin Tai couldn't do anything to him in a short time. However, the underworld is the territory of the underworld emperor. After the two of them caused such a big commotion, the underworld emperor was alerted. If it was someone else, the underworld emperor might not have intervened personally. But when he saw that it was Jin Tai who was causing trouble in his territory, he immediately rebuked Jin Tai and fought him on the spot. In the end, fire virtue escaped with his life. Snow Empress, who was holding her frightened daughter, interrupted with grief and indignation, "My wife and I have always been aloof from worldly affairs. Who knew that those people's fights would affect us?" When fire virtue had nowhere to run, he passed by the snowy mountain and targeted us. He wanted to use our ice soul mystic weapons to fight against Jin Tai. My wife and I had never participated in any of the battles between the immortal and netherworld realms, so naturally, we were unwilling to agree. As a result, the two of us began to fight. However, the true samadhi fire was naturally able to restrain the two of us. The two of us were no match for it at all. That bastard is inhuman. Snow Empress clenched her fists, her eyes bulging. Linglong was such a small child, yet he was so cruel that he could plant a wisp of true samadhi fire in her body to threaten us. Yu Qianqiu sighed silently, not knowing what to say. Although fire virtue immortal lord was in the wrong, anyone would throw caution to the wind when forced to such a state. Even a rabbit would bite when cornered. If my wife and you were forced, Jin Tai, fire, virtue, Qi, Snow Empress wept and said, "Just as we were in a dilemma, Heartless Palace's sect master Wang Qin happened to pass by. After he understood our dispute, he feigned civility to fire virtue immortal lord, saying that he would help him deal with Jin Tai. Finally, when he let his guard down, he used sword unsheathing and killed fire virtue in one move, saving Linglong." Ah! Yu Qianqiu was taken aback when he heard this. He asked in surprise, "Fire virtue immortal monarch was killed by Heartless Palace's sect master Wang Qin?" Yu Qianqiu immediately understood when he saw the couple nod in tacit agreement. No wonder everyone else in the celestial dimension would suffer misfortune here, and only the people of the Heartless Palace would be spared. But on second thought, his heart shuddered. Fire virtue was able to escape from an immortal emperor, so he must be very capable. It would not be easy for an ordinary person to ambush him. This sect master Wang Qin was really not to be underestimated. A mid-stage immortal emperor dared to ambush a late-stage immortal emperor. Just this courage alone was not something an ordinary person could compare to. No wonder Heartless Palace could become the #1 sect in the immortal realm. Thinking that fire virtue immortal lord was already dead, he could not help but feel slightly disappointed. However, his eyes inadvertently glanced at Xue Linglong, and his eyes immediately lit up. Princess has yet to recover from her injuries. Could it be that the wisp of true samadhi fire, that old thief fire virtue planted in Princess Linglong's body, still exists? Snow Empress said sadly, the samadhi true fire cannot be created or extinguished. Unless someone can absorb it, it will not be extinguished until the carrier is completely burned. My wife and I are useless, watching our daughter suffer but unable to eradicate it. We can only do our best to lessen her pain. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and touched his chin. That is to say, you have a way to suppress the samadhi true fire. What is it? But as soon as he said this, the couple became vigilant. They felt they spoke too much due to their agitated emotions. Then, they hid their sorrowful expressions and refused to say anything. Snow Empress hugged her daughter and persuaded Yu Qianqiu to go rest. Yu Qianqiu felt that there was probably some secret involved in this. He knew he wouldn't be able to get any more information from them. He smiled and cupped his hands at the family of three. Then, he turned and walked into the ice palace. However, before he could take a few steps, he suddenly heard a muffled groan behind him. Looking back, he saw that Shui Linglong's body was covered in a layer of colorful light. Her eyes were closed, and she fell into her mother's arms. Snow Emperor and Snow Empress expressions changed. They didn't even look at Yu Qianqiu. Holding hands, they carried Shui Linglong and entered the ice palace. Yu Qianqiu stood alone on the ice cliff for a while. He touched his chin and mumbled to himself, is the injury of the samadhi true fire acting up? He paced around the ice cliff for a while with his hands behind his back. He thought that if he could take the opportunity to see the samadhi true fire, it would definitely be beneficial for him to merge it in the future. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to touch the threshold if he didn't understand the samadhi true fire at all. Making up his mind, Yu Qianqiu flashed to the entrance of the ice palace. Then, he lightened his footsteps and walked in slowly. The ice palace shone a magnificent sapphire blue. It made one feel relaxed and happy. When Yu Qianqiu walked to the center of the hall, he hesitated for a while. Finally, he gritted his teeth and walked into the depths of the ice palace. After walking along the passageway of the back hall for tens of meters, he saw a 3-meter-wide spiral staircase. There were no other entrances or exits on either side. He controlled his pace as he walked up, afraid that he would cause a misunderstanding. This ascending passageway was at least 100 meters high. He didn't know why this family made the staircase so long. When he reached the top, he realized that it was an arched hall that was nearly 20 meters high. The size of the hall was less than half of the main hall below. However, from the carvings on the walls, it gave off a warm and homey feeling. A corridor ran from the center of the circular hall to both sides. He stood in the middle and looked at both sides. There were a few entrances on both sides of the corridor. He didn't know which one the family was in. Just as he was hesitating whether he should release his divine sense to investigate, he suddenly realized that there was a strange light shining at the entrance of a room on the right side of the corridor. He immediately walked over. When he reached the door of the room, he realized that it was the same as the room below. Although there was no door, the door was curved, and he couldn't see the situation inside. He wanted to barge in directly, but he was afraid of causing unnecessary trouble. The couple must be treating their daughter's injuries. After thinking about it, he walked to the wall opposite the room, turned around, and sat down cross-legged with his eyes closed. After a few hours, the Snow Emperor's gloomy voice suddenly sounded in front of him. "What are you doing barging in here?" Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes and saw that the Snow Emperor's face was slightly pale. Her eyes that were staring at him were full of haze, as if she was about to explode. He immediately stood up and cupped his hands, saying, "I'm guessing that the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress are treating Princess Linglong's injuries, and are afraid that someone will barge in. So I'm guarding your door to help protect you. It can be considered as a little help." I hope the Snow Emperor doesn't misunderstand. I definitely don't have any other intentions. Protect? The Snow Emperor snorted coldly, indicating that she didn't believe him. In fact, the couple had long heard the sound of Yu Qianqiu coming up. However, they were at the critical moment of treating their daughter's injuries, and really couldn't divert their attention to stop him. They were really afraid that Yu Qianqiu would take the opportunity to cause trouble, and then their daughter would be in danger. Luckily, Yu Qianqiu paced around the door for a while, then sat down and didn't move, indicating that he didn't have any enmity. However, it still made the couple worried for a while. The Snow Empress regretted luring this group of people to the Ice Palace. At this moment, the Snow Empress also walked out with a pale face. She said in a low voice, "There's no need to protect me. You barged into a place that you shouldn't have. On account of Wang Qing, I won't make things difficult for you. Bring your people and scram." Damn it. Heartless bitch who turned hostile. To think that I praised you like a flower. Yu Qianqiu cursed silently. If it was before, he would definitely be eager to leave. However, the true Samadhi fire was indeed attractive to him, so he didn't want to leave now. His expression was slightly solemn as he said, "Originally, I was still thinking that perhaps I have a way to treat your daughter's injuries, so I wanted to give it a try. However, since the Snow Empress has put it this way, then I have nothing else to say. Farewell." He cupped his hands and walked out with large strides. The couple looked at each other when they heard that. Although they didn't believe that he could treat their daughter's injuries, there might be hope. Even if it was a slim hope, they still wanted to give it a try. Wait. The Snow Empress raised her hand and said. Yu Qianqiu sneered in his heart. "Do you really think that I'm polite to you people for no reason?" He acted as if he didn't hear anything and just walked on his own. The Snow Empress' expression twitched. She bit her lips and teleported in front of Yu Qianqiu. She bowed and said, "I was rash just now and offended you with my words. I hope that Mr. will forgive me and not take it to heart. A mother's love had always been great. For the safety of her children, how could she not put down a bit of her pride?" At this moment, the Snow Empress also flashed over and cupped her hands at Yu Qianqiu. "Mister, you said that you have a way to treat my daughter's injuries. I wonder if it's true." He also changed the way he addressed him to Mr. "Don't stand on ceremony. I only said that perhaps, and I want to give it a try. I can't give a definite guarantee." Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly. He raised his right hand and opened his palm. A ball of dazzling green flame suddenly appeared in his palm. Chapter 10:23. Only boasting and not showing some ability. If he messed things up, he might lose his life. Yu Qianqiu thought to himself as he snickered in his heart. The couple stared at the dazzling green flame in his palm. Their pupils gradually widened, then shrunk at the same time. They cried out involuntarily, "Green flame!" They could not help but be excited. Based on their experience, they naturally knew that green flame was an indispensable ingredient in cultivating the true Samadhi fire. In other words, the person in front of them was not boasting. Since he could control the green flame, it was indeed possible that he could cure their daughter's injuries. The green flame quickly retracted into his palm. Yu Qianqiu raised an index finger to his lips and shushed them. He pointed downstairs and whispered with shifty eyes, "You have to know that if word of this gets out, I'm afraid Jean Tai will be the first to not let me off." The couple nodded in ecstasy. The Snow Emperor even whispered, "We understand. Don't worry, I've checked. They are still in the room downstairs. Bring me to Princess Linglong's injuries first." Yu Qianqiu said with a smile. "Please." The couple extended their hands in unison and accompanied him quickly into the room. Once they entered the room, the Snow Emperor immediately cast a soundproof barrier. Yu Qianqiu looked around the room. Compared to the guest room downstairs, there was an ice couch, an ice stool, and a dressing table. Princess Linglong was still lying on the ice couch with her eyes tightly shut, unconscious. He pointed and asked, "How is she?" The Snow Emperor, who had high hopes for him, explained in detail in a gentle voice, "My wife and I worked together to temporarily suppress the throbbing true samadhi fire in her body. However, it will flare up every day for the next 2 days. Only after suppressing those 2 times will the true samadhi fire lie dormant for a period of time. At that time, Linglong will wake up." "I see." Yu Qianqiu pinched his chin and looked at the unconscious Shui Linglong. He frowned and said, "What method did you use to suppress the true samadhi fire in her body?" This was a question he had asked outside but did not get an answer. This time, he brought it up again in hopes of unraveling the secret. After all, the sharpness of the true samadhi fire was known throughout the 3 realms. How could he not be interested in the fact that the two could suppress the true samadhi fire? The husband and wife looked at each other, and seemed a little hesitant. After a moment of silence, the Snow Empress asked, "Yu Qianqiu, why do you want to help us?" Obviously, she was considering whether it was worth it for her to reveal that secret. "I want to make friends with you. You might not believe me if I put it this way, so I'll put it more bluntly." Yu Qianqiu looked at the two of them and said with a smile, "If one day I need your help, I hope you can help me." The couple nodded slightly. Empress Shui smiled bitterly and said, "Your words are almost exactly the same as what Wang Qing said back then." Yu Qianqiu asked in surprise, "Did Wang Qing say that he needed your help?" Seeing the couple nodding again, Yu Qianqiu could not help but feel suspicious. A thought flashed through his mind, but he did not grasp it. He thought for a while and shook his head. "If it's your secret and you don't think it's convenient to say it, then don't say it. Let's take a look at Princess Linglong's injuries first. Where is the true samadhi fire suppressed in her body?" As if she had heard a doctor asking about her daughter's illness, the Snow Emperor said seriously, "There is no fixed location. It is usually hidden in her limbs and bones. It will only show up when it flares up. It appears in a different place every time. It's a shame that we can't find out where it is hidden with our cultivation." Yu Qianqiu was silent for a moment before he slowly said, "I'll say the ugly words first. I can only try my best. I don't have the slightest confidence that I can dispel the samadhi true fire in her body. I hope you are mentally prepared. Please don't blame me if I fail." "Of course." The Snow Emperor nodded. The Snow Empress said worriedly, "Nothing will happen, right?" "Don't worry, Snow Empress. Whether or not she can be cured, I will first ensure her safety. I will not forcefully cast the spell." After Yu Qianqiu finished speaking, he stepped onto the ice couch and helped Shui Linglong sit up in front of the couple's nervous gazes. The couple immediately understood what he was going to do. He was going to use the most serious method. The Snow Empress immediately helped her unconscious daughter to sit cross-legged. Yu Qianqiu sat cross-legged behind Shui Linglong and pressed his palms on her back. He calmed himself down and slowly closed his eyes. He quickly injected his divine sense into her body to check for any abnormalities. However, after combing through Shui Linglong's meridians and bones, as the Snow Empress said, he couldn't find any trace of the true samadhi fire. He didn't know where it was hidden. After opening her eyes, the Snow Empress asked anxiously, "How is it?" The Snow Emperor pulled her back and said with a bitter smile, "Don't be anxious. Let him take his time." Yu Qianqiu frowned and thought for a while, then said, "I have to find a way to lure out the true samadhi fire hidden in her body and observe it. Only then can I be sure if I have a way to get rid of it. I'm going to use a more dangerous method now. I'll force the blue fire into her limbs and bones, and even the fine parts of her meridians to search and lure it. I'll have to trouble the two of you to stay vigilant at all times. Don't let anyone disturb me. Don't let me be distracted. If anything happens, please let me know in advance so that I have time to slowly withdraw the blue fire. The couple was shocked when they heard this. Fire had a restraining effect on meditation, not to mention the blue fire. Furthermore, the blue fire had to be injected into the body of the meditation practitioner. Just think about it, the meridians in the human body were extremely delicate, and if an accident were to happen, that person would be crippled even if he didn't die. Will this work? The Snow Empress asked with a trembling voice. The Snow Emperor pulled her back again and said through gritted teeth, since he dares to do this, he must have the confidence. Don't disturb him. We'll do our best to protect him. The Snow Empress turned around and grabbed his arm. She was so nervous that her body was trembling. Yu Qianqiu was confident in his control of fire. Most importantly, he could control the temperature of the fire at any time. As long as there weren't too many disturbances, there wouldn't be any accidents if he was suddenly interrupted by an external force midway. Looking at the nervous Snow Empress, he couldn't be bothered to say anything else. He had to see what the true Samadhi fire looked like. The palms that were pressed on Shuo Linglong's back shook slightly. Two lumps of bright blue flames that dyed the entire room enveloped his palms. Then, Shuo Linglong's body seemed to have been splashed with oil. The blue fire spread throughout her body with a buzz and enveloped her entire body. The Snow Empress was so frightened that her heart almost jumped out of her throat. She was about to let out a scream when the Snow Emperor covered her mouth. The Snow Emperor shook his head and signaled her not to be rash. The two of them who were abnormally nervous watched for a while before they finally relaxed. They discovered that although their daughter was enveloped by the blue fire, there was nothing on her body. Not even a strand of her hair was burnt. They had seen people who were good at controlling fire, but that was only in terms of precision. They had never seen someone who could release fire without feeling any warmth. They even suspected that what Yu Qianqiu released was the blue fire of the true Samadhi fire. However, the terrifying aura that came from the blazing fire clearly told them that it was indeed the blue fire. Such exquisite control of fire made the two of them gasp in amazement. They couldn't help but have high hopes that Yu Qianqiu could cure their daughter's injuries. However, Yu Qianqiu, who had injected the blue fire into Shuo Linglong's body, didn't think so. He used the blue fire to search every part of Shuo Linglong's body. He didn't even let go of the private parts of her chest and lower body. However, he still couldn't find any trace of the true Samadhi fire. He couldn't figure out where the true Samadhi fire had been hidden. Logically, the Snow Emperor and the Snow Empress shouldn't have lied to him about this. However, the thing was clearly in her body. Why couldn't he find it? Chapter 1024. The husband and wife were anxious to know the final result, but when they heard him say this, the two could only bow to Yu Qianqiu. Snow Empress then cupped her fists and said, "Thank you, Mr. How is Linglong?" Yu Qianqiu put down his hands that were pushing Shuo Linglong's back and helped her lie down on the ice couch. He got off the bed and walked between the couple. He said with a serious expression, "To be honest, I'm still not confident that I can expel the Samadhi true fire." The husband and wife looked at each other and secretly exchanged glances. Both of them had witnessed Yu Qianqiu's miraculous technique of controlling fire. In addition, they had heard him say that he had found traces of the true Samadhi fire that they were unable to find with their cultivation. They immediately mistakenly thought that Yu Qianqiu wanted to use this as a bargaining chip to threaten them. Snow Empress pondered for a while and said, "If Mr. can cure my daughter's injury, I'll tell you anything I know." This was undoubtedly a condition. "As long as you cure my daughter's injury, I'll tell you all the secrets you want to know." However, he had to put it in a roundabout way. He couldn't help it since he had a request. Yu Qianqiu rejoiced in his heart when he heard this, but he knew that they were all people who were used to fighting and killing. For something like this that had no proof, they would fall out with each other at a whim. You wouldn't even have a place to complain. Besides, he showed off the blue fire in front of them. How could he do something that was worth losing? Yu Qianqiu's face darkened and he said in a deep voice, "What kind of person do you think I am? I, leaping thousand worries bandit, have my own principles. I have my own bottom line. If I want something, I will fight for it myself. There's no need for you to beat around the bush and ask for charity." These words sounded quite unyielding, but if you thought about it quietly, it was as good as not saying anything. Thieves have morals. The couple were speechless. They didn't expect that taking the initiative to give in would anger him instead. Snow Empress immediately came out and smiled apologetically. "Mister, don't be angry. He was just eager to save his daughter. Forget it, let's not talk about anything else now." Yu Qianqiu bluffed for a while and immediately changed the topic. He stared at Xue Linglong who was on the ice couch and said, "This Samadhi true fire is a little strange. It used the method of fusing with Princess Linglong's physical body to hide its tracks. Now, Princess Linglong is it, and it is Princess Linglong. That's why no one can find its tracks. If I didn't use the green fire to lure it, I probably wouldn't have been able to find it. Fuse together." The Snow Empress cried out involuntarily. The Snow Emperor raised his hand to signal her not to panic. He frowned and asked, "How did this happen?" "I'm afraid this has something to do with the secret technique you and your wife used to suppress it. It became afraid of being suppressed, so it used another method to protect itself. That's why I said it has spirituality. But then again, if it wasn't for you and your wife suppressing it, I'm afraid Princess Linglong would have turned into ashes. It's not your fault." As Yu Qianqiu spoke, he walked out from between the couple and walked to the other side of the ice couch. He looked at Xue Linglong who had her eyes closed and said, "To put it bluntly, it has already treated Princess Linglong as a human cauldron. When it is suppressed to the point where it can't do anything, it quietly lurks in Princess Linglong's body and slowly absorbs the energy in Princess Linglong's body. When it accumulates enough energy, it will immediately come out to cause trouble. This is also why it hibernates and explodes at times." After the couple understood the reason, they couldn't help but look at their tortured daughter with sorrow. At first, they thought that the Samadhi true fire would only explode occasionally. Who knew that it had been extracting the energy from their daughter's body day and night? As her parents, they were very worried. "Linglong!" The Snow Empress suddenly cried out in grief. She sat sideways on the ice couch and hugged Xue Linglong's body as she sobbed. The Snow Emperor's tightened lips slowly relaxed. She cupped her hands at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Thank you, mister, for clearing up my doubts. Since Mr. has already understood the Samadhi true fire, I believe you have a solution." Upon hearing this, the Snow Empress immediately seemed to go crazy. She stood up in an instant and directly knelt down in front of Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu was slightly shocked. He still had this bit of reaction speed. He immediately stretched out his hands and held her arms. The plump feeling in his hand and the delicate fragrance that assailed his nostrils didn't make him have any improper thoughts. He was only moved by the pitiful heart of a parent. He smiled bitterly and said, "Madam, why do you have to do this? Yu Qianqiu can't bear it. Quickly get up. If Mr. doesn't promise to cure my daughter, I will kneel wherever Mr. goes." The Snow Empress half knelt in the air and cried. The flirtatious expression that she used to tease Yu Qianqiu previously was nowhere to be seen. The Snow Emperor stood at the side with his lips tightly shut and didn't speak. "Damn it! She's my army." Yu Qianqiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The action of lifting her up had almost turned into carrying her. The other party's plump chest was already pressed against his abdomen. Without her cultivation, he couldn't carry her. As her husband, he didn't even care. Madam, quickly get up. Although I can't guarantee that I can cure her, I promise to do my best. As he spoke, he looked at the Snow Emperor with a bitter expression and said, "Quickly persuade Madam. If I can't do it, there's no use even if you force me to death. I've already promised to do my best. What more do you want?" Hearing him say this, the Snow Emperor hurriedly carried his wife. "This old woman is really strong." Yu Qianqiu shook his slightly numb arm and asked doubtfully, "Based on the love you and your wife have for your daughter, you must have found an expert to treat Princess Linglong. What did they say?" The Snow Emperor hugged his wife, shook his head slightly and sighed, "Of course we did. For this matter, I even personally went to the Underworld Royal Palace and found the Emperor of the Underworld, Bai Qi. I told Bai Qi that if he could save my daughter, I and my wife were willing to submit to him. Only then did I convince him. He personally came to the Ice Palace to treat Linglong, but there was nothing he could do. It seemed that this couple was quite influential to be able to invite the Emperor of the Underworld, Bai Qi. Who in the immortal realm could invite the immortal Emperor, Jin Tai?" Yu Qianqiu exclaimed, "Didn't Emperor of the Underworld, Bai Qi, say anything else?" "Yes." There was a flash of hesitation on the Snow Emperor's face, but he didn't hide it and said happily, after Bai Qi examined Linglong, he said that there were only two ways to save her. One was to find an expert who cultivated the Samadhi true fire to expel or absorb the Samadhi true fire in Linglong's body. The other was to find the fire spirit of the 5 spirits of heaven and earth, who could also expel or absorb the Samadhi true fire. Aside from these two methods, there shouldn't be any other way in the 3 realms, unless we can find an expert from the immortal realm to forcefully cure her. After saying this, he left with an apologies, and left. Yu Qianqiu was stunned, the 5 spirits of heaven and earth. But not long ago, Bai Qi personally sent another message. The Snow Emperor continued with a helpless expression. Bai Qi said that there is someone who might have a way to expel the Samadhi true fire in Linglong's body. Oh! Yu Qianqiu came back to his senses, and his eyes lit up. "I heard that there are some existences in the netherworld who rarely show their faces, but are even more terrifying than Emperor of the Underworld, Bai Qi. Could it be them?" Seeing the Snow Emperor shake her head, he asked curiously, "Could it be the immortal Emperor Jin Tai who once fought with Fire Virtue Immortal Lord?" "That's not it either. If it is Jin Tai, then it will be easy." The Snow Emperor sighed, "You should have heard of a madman from the mortal world. He broke into the Netherworld Royal Palace alone, defeated the silver-armored army of the Underworld General, and then fought the 4 Underworld Generals together without losing. In the end, he was severely injured by Bai Qi and had to flee." Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched. He was too familiar with that person. He couldn't help but ask weakly, "Is it that person called Bai Changchun?" But he was severely injured by Emperor of the Underworld, Bai Qi, in 3 moves. Even Bai Qi was helpless against the Samadhi true fire. How could he have a way? AI. That's him. The Snow Emperor sighed slightly and said, "Back then, I had the same doubts as you." Bai Qi said that this person's cultivation was different. He could control wind, fire, thunder, lightning, snow, rain, wind, frost, and all the other natural phenomena. This meant that he had a deep understanding of the various powers of heaven and earth, and was able to control them with ease. Otherwise, with his cultivation, he wouldn't have been able to escape my pursuit. The Samadhi true fire could render everyone helpless, but in this person's eyes, it was probably nothing. Yu Qianqiu subconsciously touched his face and said, "Is that person as exaggerated as Bai Qi made him out to be?" I also felt that it was not very possible. I even suspected that Bai Qi wanted to use me to track that person down. But after thinking about it, I know that although Bai Qi has many ways of handling people, he is also a proud person. He wouldn't lie for a defeated opponent. The Snow Emperor looked at his wife who was biting her lips in his arms and shook his head. But that person was chased by Bai Qi into the forbidden area of the netherworld. We don't even know if he is dead or alive. Moreover, Bai Qi didn't dare to barge in. It's not that I'm afraid of death. AI. Let's not talk about these useless things. Mister, please do your best. Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly. Hearing this, he was even less confident in his method of rescue. He shook his head and said, I've been gone for too long. I have to go down and tell the others. Otherwise, if Grey Cloud Xian sees that I haven't returned, he will definitely make a big fuss. It might affect our rescue later. After all, my life now involves his life and the safety of the entire Heartless Palace. I understand. The Snow Emperor nodded and comforted his wife. He stretched out his hand and said, Please. Then, he accompanied Yu Qianqiu and went out. The two of them had just arrived downstairs when they bumped into Grey Cloud Xian, who was leading Shen Yu and Ding Xiang to the main hall with a gloomy face. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu was safe and sound, Grey Cloud Xian's expression finally became better. However, when the few of them saw the Snow Emperor and Yu Qianqiu coming together from the back palace, and their attitude was easygoing, they were a little surprised. They didn't know what had happened. Old song. You guys stay here for a while. I have some things to ask the Snow Emperor. After this matter is settled, we will leave immediately. Yu Qianqiu walked in front of the few of them and said with a smile. The Snow Emperor nodded at the side, indicating that he would let everyone leave. Chapter 1025. In this way, it instantly caused all of them to be filled with suspicions, and they all muttered in their hearts. What exactly is Yu Qianqiu doing by staying with the Snow Empress behind everyone's back? After exchanging greetings, Yu Qianqiu and the Snow Empress exchanged a meaningful glance. The two of them were about to return to the upper floor of the harem when they suddenly heard the sound of someone flying over and descending. The few of them looked outside, but they didn't see anyone. However, they heard the voice of a woman speaking respectfully from outside. Junior Lily requests to see the Snow Empress. Yu Qianqiu and the others felt the voice was familiar. When they heard the surname Li, their expressions became unnatural. They guessed that it was the people from Li Palace. They all thought that the people from Li Palace coming here probably had something to do with what everyone had done. Snow Empress looked at them and said calmly, "Come in." From her tone, she seemed to know the person. Outside the palace, a woman in black leisurely walked in. Her hair was tied up in a bun, and her expression was calm and tranquil. It was none other than the third princess of Li Palace that Yu Qianqiu and the others had seen before. They just didn't know that her name was Lily. Lily couldn't help but be startled when she saw that there were so many people inside the ice palace. When she discovered that it was Yu Qianqiu and the others, her expression instantly changed. She stopped where she was and only continued to walk forward after a long while. She was the only friend of the Princess of Ice Palace, Xue Linglong. The two often played together, and could be counted as a frequent guest of the Ice Palace. He didn't come here to play with Xue Linglong, but because the inscription symbol that belonged to the Crown Prince, Li Zhong, suddenly cracked. This caused a huge uproar in the Li Palace, which meant that the Crown Prince, Li Zhong, was dead. After checking the location of Crown Prince Li Zhong's death, they found that he was in the center of the Snow Mountain. That was the territory of Snow Empress and Snow Emperor. Although Snow Emperor and Snow Empress would be rude to the people of the immortal world, they wouldn't do anything to the water tribe of the River Styx. Not to mention the relationship between third Princess Li Li and Ice Palace's Xue Linglong. Logically speaking, the Ice Palace's people wouldn't lay their hands on the Crown Prince of Li Palace. Therefore, they investigated why Crown Prince Li Zhong had gone to the millionly great snow mountain. In the end, Crown Prince Li Zhong's trusted subordinates reported in fear that because Crown Prince Li Zhong had been humiliated by Yu Qianqiu at the Dragon Transformation sect, he could not swallow this resentment, so he secretly followed Yu Qianqiu and prepared to take revenge along the way. Li Guang was enraged. Although he hated Li Zhong for being narrow-minded and disappointing, it was still his son who had died. The cause of death still had to be investigated. However, the Great Snowy Mountain and the Netherworld River were adjacent to each other. The water tribe of the Netherworld River had long heard of the power of the Snow Emperor and the Snow Empress. In addition, the agreement between the Land Tribe and the Water Tribe prevented him from acting recklessly. As a result, he had Third Princess Lili bring a group of elite soldiers from the Water Tribe of Li Palace to the interior of the Great Snow Mountain to investigate the cause of Crown Prince Li Zhong's death. Crown Prince Li Zhong's corpse, which had been split into two by Tsangyun Xian's sword, was found not far from the Netherworld River. The corpse had already been covered by a thick layer of snow, and there were traces of a fierce battle between the Ice Palace's Ice Soul Xian soldiers in the surroundings. Lili ordered people to collect her brother's corpse, and had everyone wait in the Netherworld River. Then, she came alone to visit the Ice Palace, hoping to obtain some information about her brother's death from the Snow Emperor, or to ask if there were any other suspicious people who had passed through the Great Snow Mountain. In short, she believed that the people of the Great Snow Mountain would not kill her brother. However, when she stepped into the Ice Palace and saw that Yu Qianqiu and the others were also behind her, she thought of the instructions of her brother's trusted subordinates, and combined the cause and effect, immediately locked onto the murderer. However, Yu Qianqiu and the others were a group of sly fellows, and on the surface, they all acted as if nothing had happened. Ha! The little girl is here. The Snow Emperor smiled calmly. Yu Qianqiu was as calm as a mountain, but Tsangyun Xian and the others were not very calm, because from the Snow Emperor's words, they could tell that both parties were old acquaintances, and they did not know if she would betray them. This junior greets the Snow Emperor. Li bowed. At the side, Yu Qianqiu clapped his hands and laughed. Third Princess, it's really fate. To think that we would meet here again. Oh. You know each other. The Snow Emperor looked surprised. In reality, after listening to Tsangyun Xian's description of the Dragon Transformation sect, and with Li's reaction just now, he had already guessed that both parties had met. Seeing the Snow Emperor's attitude, everyone immediately knew what was going on, and glanced slightly at Yu Qianqiu. They did not know what potion he had fed the Snow Emperor, and instantly felt much more at ease. Yes. Li replied respectfully, and turned to ask calmly, so Senior Snow Emperor is also acquainted with them. The Snow Emperor chuckled, and pointed at Tsangyun Xian. I am old acquaintances with the Heartless Palace's sect leader Wang Qing. They came to visit today, and this is the first time I have met them. I see. Li nodded indifferently. The Snow Emperor suddenly sighed. This girl is here to look for Linglong. Her old illness has relapsed, and I'm afraid she can't play with you anymore. Sister Linglong. Li's face was filled with discomfort, and then she calmed herself down. She cupped her hands and said, This junior is not here to look for Sister Linglong, but because my elder brother was killed in the Great Snow Mountain, and I am here to find the murderer under my father's orders. I would like to ask Senior Snow Emperor if you have found any suspicious people? There's such a thing. The Snow Emperor was surprised. Why don't I know? For the sake of his daughter's life, he could only put aside his daughter's friend. Li paused when she heard that. She recalled that there were traces of an intense battle with the Ice Soul Profound soldiers beside the river Styx, and how could the Snow Emperor not know? She immediately knew that she could not get any information from her. She slowly tilted her head to look at Yu Qianqiu and the others, and asked indifferently, Have you seen the murderer who killed my elder brother? No, no, no. The few of them denied, and Yu Qianqiu even frowned and said, "Ever since we parted ways with you at the Dragon Transformation Gate, we have never seen your elder brother, let alone the murderer who killed your elder brother. Third Princess, I'm sorry for your loss. I believe that justice has long arms, and the murderer will be caught sooner or later." The few of them instantly felt that these words were a little tiresome, and the corner of Grey Cloud Xian's mouth twitched. It was Yu Qianqiu who asked him to kill, and now he was saying such nonsense again. Although he knew that these were perfunctory words, as the murderer, it was uncomfortable to hear. Ding Xiang and Shen Yu stole a glance at him, and they were amused. "If that's the case, I won't disturb you anymore." Lily nodded to the few of them, then bowed to the Snow Emperor and said, "I'll come and see Sister Linglong after some time. Now, I still have to find the murderer who killed my elder brother, so I'll take my leave now. My condolences, I won't see you off." The Snow Emperor stretched out her hand and said. The few of them watched as Lily slowly walked to the door. Suddenly, she turned around and stared at Shen Yu with a frosty face. She said sternly, "Shen Yu, you really didn't see who killed my elder brother?" Ah. Shen Yu was originally a lonely wandering water tribe in the river Styx. He had always been a coward who bullied the kind and feared the evil. When Lily suddenly said that, he was so scared that he almost spoke incoherently. Yu Qianqiu immediately kicked him and shouted coldly, "Third Princess is asking you a question. Why are you in a daze?" Shen Yu staggered from the kick and immediately came back to his senses. He bowed and replied, "Third Princess, I really didn't see it." Lily stared at him coldly for a while, then slowly walked out of the palace door without saying a word. She turned into a stream of light and flew away. I didn't expect this gentle and quiet girl to have this side to her. It seems that she has noticed something. The Snow Emperor's gaze swept across the few of them and finally landed on the ashen-faced Shen Yu. He couldn't figure out why the water Styx would mix with the people of the celestial world and be so afraid of Yu Qianqiu. Who cares what she saw? This matter was started by Li Zhong. There's no reason that he can't allow others to retaliate when he kills. It's fine if she knows what's good for her, but if she dares to keep pestering me, don't blame me for annihilating the entire River Styx Black Carp clan one day. A trace of haze flashed across Yu Qianqiu's face. He turned and said to the Snow Emperor, "Let's continue our business." The Snow Emperor was stunned, then nodded. The two of them walked towards the depths of the ice palace under the suspicious gaze of Zhangyan Xian and the others. Back in the room above, the Snow Empress, who had calmed down, asked in confusion, "Is that girl Lily here?" "Humph. That girl doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. She came here to show off her talent, but she's already gone. Ignore her." The Snow Emperor snorted and looked at Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu also calmed down and looked at the couple with a burning gaze. "Although I can't guarantee that I can cure Princess Linglong, I hope that what you see during the process can rot in your stomach. Otherwise, I won't let the three of you go. I hope you don't think I'm joking." The couple looked at each other, not knowing why he said such a serious thing. What they were going to see must be very important. The Snow Emperor said solemnly, "Don't worry about this. We can abide by the rules here and stand aloof from worldly affairs. We are not heartless people." This was what Yu Qianqiu wanted. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to expose the blue flame in front of them. He didn't say anything else and stepped onto the ice couch again. Just as he helped Shuai Linglong sit properly, the Snow Empress immediately helped her daughter sit properly. He sat behind Shuai Linglong and calmed down. Then, he pressed his palms on Shuai Linglong's back. He first used his divine sense to check the condition of Shuai Linglong's body. Then, he pressed his palms on Shuai Linglong's back. His palms shook slightly and two balls of dancing black flames appeared on his palms. A cold aura and a thick deathly aura spread, black flame. The couple's pupils contracted and they exclaimed in shock. Yu Qianqiu suddenly opened his eyes and stared at the couple. The couple immediately understood that they had disturbed him. They were embarrassed. They begged him to save their daughter, but they were the ones who ruined things. How embarrassing. Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes and the black flame quickly engulfed Shuo Linglong. The couple immediately held each other's hands excitedly. This was beyond their expectations. They didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to have not only the blue flame of the Samadhi true fire, but also the black flame that separated the yin and yang realms. Chapter 10:26. In this way, the husband and wife were more confident that Yu Qianqiu could cure their daughter. How could they not be excited? The black fire in Shuo Linglong's body was silent. After waiting for a while, the hidden true Samadhi fire did not come out to absorb the energy of the black fire. The room was also silent. Yu Qianqiu placed his palms on Shuo Linglong's back and focused on the movement in her body. He believed that the true Samadhi fire would come out again. With his sensitivity to fire, he could faintly feel that something was stirring in Shuo Linglong's body. The husband and wife held their breath and stared at Yu Qianqiu, not daring to breathe too loudly. They hoped to see some clues from Yu Qianqiu's face. However, Yu Qianqiu's expression was as calm as stagnant water. They couldn't see anything. After a full 2 hours, the two of them finally saw a sly smile from the corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth, and they almost wanted to open their mouths to ask how it was. The true Samadhi fire hidden in Shuo Linglong's body finally couldn't resist the temptation and appeared. It was like a huge net covering Shuo Linglong's body. It quietly appeared in every meridian in her body. It was invisible and formless. Even divine senses couldn't detect it. However, Yu Qianqiu, who had filled Shuo Linglong's meridians with the black fire, could easily sense its existence. After the invisible net appeared, it stayed still for a while. It was probably afraid of being suppressed by the husband and wife. After confirming that there was no danger, the ends of each branch wriggled slightly and began to extract the black fire's energy. It was as if they were drinking to their heart's content. Knowing that it was still vigilant, Yu Qianqiu didn't dare to disturb it. It was already deeply rooted in Shuo Linglong's body. It had almost spread to every corner of Shuo Linglong's body. Even though Yu Qianqiu cultivated the fire technique, he wasn't confident that he could completely remove it from Shuo Linglong's body. For Shuo Linglong's safety, he could only play a little game with it step by step. Yu Qianqiu had absorbed enough energy from the green fire, and the energy from the black fire was almost at the edge of its mouth. Yu Qianqiu was prepared to feed it the purple fire later. Half a day later, the invisible net stopped absorbing the black fire's energy and went back into Shuo Linglong's body. Yu Qianqiu knew that it had absorbed enough and began to retract the remaining black flames. Just as he opened his eyes, he heard the Snow Empress asking anxiously, "Sir, how is it?" Yu Qianqiu looked at the two of them and smiled. He replied, "I was thinking, since you and your wife have a way to suppress it, I believe that if I lure it to a place, you can also trap it." The couple looked at each other and understood that the it Yu Qianqiu was referring to was the true Samadhi fire. The Snow Empress frowned and said, "It should be possible, but the key is to completely separate it from Linglong's physical body. Otherwise, my wife and I will be afraid to take action. You should know that every time we heavily injured it, we couldn't kill it because we were afraid of hurting Linglong. I will think of a way." Yu Qianqiu told the two of them seriously, "This time, I need your cooperation. Inject your consciousness into Linglong's body and hide it in her dantian. I will think of a way to draw it into her dantian. Remember, don't act rashly. Wait for my notice. Once you receive my notice, immediately trap it in Linglong's dantian. Don't let it have a chance to come into contact with Linglong's physical body. I will think of a way to absorb it. How is it?" Do you understand what I mean? His intention was very clear. The two of them weren't fools and naturally understood what he meant. Both of them nodded excitedly. They stepped onto the ice couch and sat cross-legged on either side of Ling Long. They each placed a hand on Ling Long's left and right shoulders. After a while, the couple said with a serious expression, "We can begin." Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly. His palms that were pressed on Shuai Linglong's back shook slightly. Two balls of purple flames suddenly burned on his palms. The terrifying aura that made one's heart palpitate almost made the couple tremble. The Snow Emperor and Snow Empress widened their eyes and couldn't help but exclaim, "Purple flames. Calm your mind." Yu Qianqiu said plainly and closed his eyes. The couple looked at each other in shock. They finally understood why Yu Qianqiu had warned them to keep what they saw to themselves. Otherwise, he wouldn't let the three of them off. Imagine how many people in the immortal realm and netherworld would think of ways to get rid of him once this news was spread. Especially immortal Emperor Jin Tai, who had tasted the power of fire virtue, immortal lord. He would be the first to not let Yu Qianqiu off. A trace of emotion flashed in the couple's eyes. After living for so many years, it had been a long time since they saw someone who could move them. In order to help them, he had even sacrificed his life. They owed him a huge favor. No matter if it succeeded or not, as long as the couple still had a conscience, they couldn't let him down. The couple sighed and closed their eyes. But when they saw the purple flames in their daughter's meridians, which were like the roots of an old tree, they were shocked again. Not to mention such a powerful fire control technique, just the energy consumption was not small. It undoubtedly proved that Yu Qianqiu was really trying his best. Little did they know that for Yu Qianqiu, who could control thousands of swords at the same time, although it was strenuous, it wasn't a big deal. The purple flames in Shuai Linglong's body were silent. Yu Qianqiu could feel the restlessness of the fellow hidden in Shuai Linglong's body. Perhaps excitement was more appropriate to describe it. Because of this, Yu Qianqiu was more confident that he could take care of this fellow. He couldn't help but smile. As long as it was to your liking, it was fine. However, the hidden fellow still maintained his vigilance. Although it was restless, it still refused to show itself. After almost an hour, it began to quietly appear from Shuai Linglong's body. After confirming that there was no danger, it hurriedly wrapped around the purple flames and madly absorbed them, but this time, the absorption wasn't as smooth. Unlike the blue and black flames, Yu Qianqiu didn't let it absorb the purple flames. Instead, he increased the control of the purple flames so that the energy contained in the purple flames wouldn't be absorbed so easily. But it was obvious that the purple flames were much more tempting to it than the blue and black flames. Although the amount of purple flames it absorbed was negligible, it couldn't help but want more. Bit by bit, it increased the absorption of the purple flames. At the same time, Yu Qianqiu mischievously increased the control of the purple flames so that it wouldn't be able to freely absorb the purple flames' energy. The invisible net of energy bit even tighter. When it started to bite the purple flames without any restraint, Yu Qianqiu's lips curled into a smile. With Shuai Linglong's dantian as the center, the purple flames that radiated to all the meridians in her limbs and bones started to slowly shrink towards her dantian. The stalemate between the two sides was slowly shrinking. Every time the net was a little discouraged, Yu Qianqiu would release a little more purple flames for it to absorb. Immediately, it would crazily bite and not let go. Once it was bitten, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't let go. He was afraid that it would run away after being fed. Like fishing, he slowly pulled the net out of Shuai Linglong's limbs and bones. After spending a lot of effort, the purple flames finally lured this fellow to the vicinity of her dantian. The couple couldn't feel the true samadhi fire. Although they didn't know how the situation was progressing, they realized that most of the purple flames were already gathered near her dantian. They knew that a good show was about to begin. Otherwise, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't play such a senseless game right under their noses. They immediately concentrated and prepared. Although the true Samadhi fire only had some ignorant spirituality, it could still be considered to have some spirituality. After biting the purple fire and piercing half of its head into the dantian, it was immediately slightly startled and immediately let go. It hid at the entrance and hesitated endlessly, as if it had felt a trace of danger. However, at this moment, the small ball of purple flames in her dantian stretched out a small section of its tail and swayed outside her dantian. The abundant purple flame's energy was leisurely volatilizing. Such arrogance was really intolerable. The invisible and invisible true Samadhi fire suddenly pounced on it and bit it without letting go. It crazily absorbed the purple flame's energy. That small section of purple flames was like a startled rabbit. The purple flames that were volatilizing quickly retracted, and with a whoosh, it pulled the true Samadhi fire into her dantian. The purple flames condensed into a purple pearl in her dantian. The true Samadhi fire that ran into her dantian hugged it and sucked it with all its might. Most of its body was still outside. This was not easy to deal with. Yu Qianqiu knew that if he didn't completely lure it in from the surrounding bodies, it would be completely useless. Even if the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress severely injured it, it could still hide in Shui Linglong's body to slowly recover its strength. This was completely treating the symptoms but not the root cause. Yu Qianqiu immediately adopted a more flexible method of luring it. He appropriately controlled the purple pearl's energy loss. Every time more true Samadhi fire entered his dantian, the purple flame's energy loss would be a little faster. The more that entered, the faster the purple flame's energy loss would be. Finally, the true Samadhi fire that was hooked in the surrounding bodies couldn't bear it anymore. It all entered his dantian and wrapped around the purple pearl tightly. It used all its strength to absorb the purple flames. Yu Qianqiu was secretly delighted, but he didn't inform the couple to close the door and beat them. He wanted to see what the true Samadhi fire looked like, so he released the purple flame's energy for it to absorb. Not long after, a thin layer of three-colored light appeared around the soybean-sized purple bowl. A weak flame that was a mixture of green, black, and purple wrapped around the purple ball and rose up. As it absorbed more and more purple fire energy, the color of the flame became more and more distinct. So this was the true Samadhi fire. It didn't look like much. Yu Qianqiu was astonished. He didn't expect that the true Samadhi fire that covered Shui Linglong's body like a net could fuse together into such a small wisp, but it could take so long. At this moment, the Snow Emperor's surprised voice sounded in his ear, "Not bad, that's it. Can we start?" The true Samadhi fire had already appeared. If he continued to hide it, it would be hard to explain if any accidents happened. Yu Qianqiu paused, then decisively transmitted his voice to the couple, "Start. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."